There we are.
Hey, everybody. Hi.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of Lorebeards and Roleplaying.
If you aren't familiar with us, hi, I'm Vera. I am one of the writers for the Warhammer Fantasy tabletop games. I write for Fantasy 4th Edition, the Old World. I write for Age of Sigmar Soulbound. And today we're to talk about Dark Heresy with my wonderful co-host, who I'm hopefully gesturing at.
Yes, yeah. You got. I think you got to the opposite direction. Like it looked on my screen that looked right. Yeah, but. So hi everybody. I'm Ross Watson. I'm a game designer and author. I've written a whole bunch of stuff for Warhammer 40,000 Roleplay, including a whole bunch of Dark Heresy, and some video games for 40K as well. And of course, I'm one of the hosts of Lorebeards 40K. So I'm happy to be here.
I think there is perhaps no one more qualified to be here than Ross, and I'm very excited for this because I think Dark Heresy is near and dear to both of our hearts. It was my first Warhammer system, my first like really serious, wonderful tabletop campaign with my current group. And Ross, of course, you had quite a lot to do with the development of the game.
That's true. After its initial launch, one thing I would really like to do is get Mike Mason on this show, because Mike was one of the guys that built the actual system for the first launch of the game. And one of the things I want to talk about today is the history of how Dark Heresy came to be. But yeah, after the initial launch of the product, the license with Fantasy Flight Games, that's where I got involved in 2008. And yeah, did the rest of that. Oh, hey, there's your banner.
Someone says they miss Scuff. No more Scuff for a little bit. We'll return to Scuff someday, maybe. But
yeah, we did a Scuff stream together a while back.
Yeah, not too long ago. That was our Snow Day stream.
That's right.
But yes, this will be the first episode of Lorebeards and Roleplaying, and the first episode about Dark Heresy, and probably not the last of either. So,
I would like to have more episodes of Dark Heresy because it's just such a really cool. Well, obviously, I love it, right? But I feel like it's got a lot there that's worthy of talking about on our show. So.
Yeah, and I think that this is a cool place to get some insight about it. So I'm quite excited to broadly discuss Dark Heresy, get in depth about certain elements of both the setting and what it's contributed to 40K, and we're going to start in that today. How
long have you been playing role-playing games, Sarah?
I have been playing role-playing games on and off since I was about, does it count when I started reading source books?
I mean, it counts from whenever you think it counts.
So Baby Vera was a nerdy kid in grade school who was really interested in these cool hardcover books with all sorts of incredible creatures in them. And Baby Vera collected 3.5 edition Dungeons and Dragons monster manuals and various source books there, and never played any of them, and had all sorts of custom concepts for adventures and different prestige classes and things that never saw the light of day, and then had a lot of various not too successful attempts at campaigns with kids in middle school and then early high school, and then started doing online forum role playing in, I would say, middle of high school, that led into my first real tabletop group around when I started college. So I've been playing for about properly maybe 10 years almost now, counting high school stuff. Maybe a little over.
That's great. Well, I got started back in 1983 when the cartoon of Dungeons & Dragons was huge on Saturday morning, and I was like, that looks neat. So my dad bought me the red box of D&D to learn on, and that was 43 years ago. Wow.
Strong.
But yeah, so we both have been playing role-playing games for a very long time. We both have a lot of experience with Dark Heresy. And I think now would be a good time to talk about what is Dark Heresy?
What is Dark Heresy? I guess the appropriate place to start is, what is heresy?
Oh, well.
What is heresy in 40K?
The broad, just about anything can be heresy in 40K, just because remember, the ecclesiarchy is 800 cults in one trench coat. So there's lots of different interpretations of what is and isn't heresy. Although there are some things that everyone agrees on. Generally, rebellion against the Imperium, worship of the dark gods, what was it, fraternization with alien cultures or Xenos races. Those things are all considered heretical.
Yeah, and part of the fun and the ambiguity behind heresy is that it is a little bit open to interpretation, right? Heresy is something that can be have an accusation levied by anyone who is vested with the authority of the emperor, such as an inquisitor.
Inquisitors are the highest authority aside from the High Lords of Terra in Warhammer 40k, so they absolutely can go around and be like, you sir, you are a heretic, and everyone else is like, I guess he's a heretic. Okay,
but they're also busy guys, right? Inquisitors. What's going on?
That's true. There's not there very many of them either, so they rely on agents, or in Dark Heresy they're called acolytes, which are their low-ranking investigators to go seek out chaos cults or rogue psychers or pernicious alien influence or even the stirrings of rebellion on an imperial world.
And these, of course, are the player characters in Dark Heresy, the acolytes, the Inquisition, who may or may not understand the powers with which they are vested, may or may not understand who they work for, but they are agents of the Emperor, in effect. If the Inquisitors are the hand of the Emperor, they're the fingertips, perhaps, out there meddling in business, getting into trouble, and having quite a lot of agency as far as individuals go in the Warhammer 40k setting.
Far more than than a typical citizen, but far less than most role-playing game characters are probably used to. This would be a good time to point out we have a great giveaway for today.
Yes, if you're interested in this very cool game, this Dark Heresy game, behold, look at that.
That is this book. I'm sorry, it's actually, I don't have it handy, but that is a version. That's a copy of the Fantasy Flight Games Dark Heresy core rulebook, signed by myself. It even has a small section that allows you to get a free fate point if you check off the box and sign it. So this is a very specially signed edition of the Dark Heresy first edition rulebook.
Not only is it very cool, it's meta. We like this.
So if you want to participate in the giveaway, and Sotek should be in the chat helping us out here today to keep track of this. But if you want to participate, I'm going to throw up a banner. You need to type !heresy, all lowercase, once and only once into the chat, and that should enter you into a chance to win this giveaway. I'll leave that banner running for a little bit, and we will drop the image. So back to just us two.
I'm going to refrain from entering myself as much as I want it. That is a very cool item that is being given away today.
I love signed books. Actually, I want to show off a couple other things really quick.
Please do.
When I was working on Dark Heresy, I stopped at a trophy shop one day, and I got myself an inquisitorial rosette made.
Oh my goodness.
So I could show it off and say, I am an inquisitor. You must do what I say. I never really did it that, but it was fun to be able to use this. This is actually my my business card holder. So
that's wonderful. Oh my God.
That's one thing I got. And then I found this at a convention and I had to get it. It was a dice bag of the Inquisition. I have two of those things that I think are fun to show off every now and then.
Very nice. Very nice.
So we were talking about what Dark Heresy is. So it's a percentile-based system. It's very, very similar in a lot of ways to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. You've played WFRIP, right, Vera?
I have, as a matter of fact, that I happen to write for WFRIP. I quite like it, and they are quite similar in some ways structurally.
Well, it's also true that they're similar in terms of relative power level. In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you are basically the scum of the earth. You are zeros who you're zeros who someday hope to be heroes. And Dark Heresy is very similar in that. So, in Warhammer Fantasy, you have, knights and wizards and warlords. But in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you are squires and rat catchers and boatmen, right? And
right.
Warhammer 40K's got Space Marines and Inquisitors and, Imperial Guard officers. And what you play is maybe a guardsman. You're lucky if you can play a Sister of Battle. That's like one of the luckiest things you can play. Most of the time, you're like a scum or a psyker or a scribe of the administratum.
Yep. You're someone who oftentimes would rather not be there. Because your job is hard.
Well, it's also very dangerous. It's so that, you know, this comes up a lot on polls of imaginary worlds you wouldn't want to live in. And Warhammer and Warhammer 40K are almost always at the top of those lists. It's like, I do not want to be there. So yeah, just being an agent of the Inquisition at the Dark Heresy level is kind of frightening. You are way in over your head, and you have hardly any resources to get the job done, but they expect you to do it or else.
Yeah, and furthermore, the way the Inquisition operates often leaves you without much information about what you're doing, or especially why, which is pretty scary, considering that as the agents on the ground dealing with problems threatening the Empire, a lot of the time you are encountering the worst things in the entire setting.
Oh, a decent comment I want to bring up really quick. Brock 6000 says, so like a grim paranoia. Paranoia does have some overlap with this, and that you are in paranoia, you are low-level troubleshooters who are just barely trusted to do, you know, a job. And Warhammer 40,000 Dark Heresy is very similar in that sense. But you don't, unlike paranoia, you don't have multiple clones. So there's that. Yeah, so Dark Heresy, it combines a lot of different genres. It's noir investigation, it's grim dark horror, it's cosmic dread, it's two-fisted pulp action. There's a lot of different things that all blend together for the feel of a Dark Heresy game.
Yeah, and the shape it takes kind of depends on where you are and what your party is like, what they know, and especially what kind of Inquisitor is running the show above you. It's very possible to have a game of Dark Heresy where your characters don't know they're in the employ of an Inquisitor at all. They are being told what to do by someone important, and they'd better do it.
A typical campaign of Dark Heresy is, you know, your agents are rooting out heresy, you're investigating corruption, confronting Xenos threats, and then gradually descending into moral compromise as the players realize the Imperium's institutions themselves are complicit in the horrors that they hunt.
Yeah, the more you know about the galaxy and how things work, and the more equipped you are to do battle against the threats of the Imperium, the more you yourself may be viewed as one of those threats, because as the Inquisition inevitably finds out, it is very difficult to remain orthodox while also remaining effective.
Yeah, one of the key features of Dark Heresy is that as your campaign progresses, you're going to go from these barely trusted low-level acolytes to maybe, like, you know, one of your guys might have a plasma pistol, maybe somebody has some armor, and then at the end of the campaign where you're actually like these competent, strong investigators, you're probably sitting around in your lair planning your next action, as somebody kicks in the door and says, Imperial Inquisition, you're all under arrest. That's how it goes.
Bookending. We love bookending.
That's usually what happens, because the Inquisition is, because you engaging with the Inquisition kind of exposes you to a lot of corruptive forces. You become insane. You can become chaos corrupted. Like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, your fate is usually not a good one towards the end.
Yes, because of course there's a corruption system in Dark Heresy, much like in Woofrip, wherein bad things can happen the more you are exposed to bad and worse things.
So Micah points out that in the new Dark Heresy game, I think he means the computer game, there's a Kroot and an Ogren, so I think you can play as Xenos or Abhumans if the GM allows it. True. I think this is reference to a question we had earlier from Neglectful, who asked, can you only play an Imperium character in Heresy? In the Dark Heresy core rulebook, it is all Imperium, all humans. I mean, unless you're a tech priest, in which case it's a little questionable whether you're human. But you're all definitely Imperium, and you're all definitely not Xenos. So yeah, that is the standard. Owlcat is obviously opening up a little bit with the idea of Ogrins and Kroot, but those are generally like acceptable types of mutations and aliens, respectively. But even so, they're going to face a lot of persecution on Imperial worlds.
Because the Inquisitor is like one of the few people in the Empire who can sanction a Xeno, for example, and say, this one is okay. We can have this as a tool in this investigation. And unless you yourself are an Inquisitor, it's kind of hard to disagree. Got a super chat from Necro Player. This stream will be fun to watch. We're reading Woofrup Tomb of Corruption. Needed some juicy details on demons for the current campaign. Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, Tome of Corruption, I believe is the name. But yes, yeah, demons do feature in Dark Heresy.
Oh, yes, they do. There are a lot of terrible things in Dark Heresy. I would say that my sense is that you are more expected to stack up against demons in Dark Heresy than you are in an average Woofrup game. The emphasis is on rooting out like the worst possible things, as opposed to a lot of the, let's call them less world-ending dangers that often crop up in some Woofrup adventures.
Well, I mean, it depends. Like the scale is usually lower, I guess. But again, you're in the setting for Dark Heresy is a whole sector of space, the Calixis sector. It's one of the largest and most well-developed regions of role-playing in all of Warhammer 40K, period. So that's pretty neat. There's tons of worlds to visit, tons of people to see, tons of enemies to fight, and the Tyrant Star, which we will get into later.
I love Calixis, by the way. It's an amazing setting, very cool space. But there are also a lot of planets there. And part of what's fun about being part of the Inquisition is that you are one of the first steps in trying to solve a problem, to which the ultimate answer is making there be one less planet in the Calixis sector. So
Exterminatus. Exterminatus is a thing that an Inquisitor can order, and it basically scours a planet clean of all life from orbit. Yeah, it's something typically not done lightly. There you go. There's a question from Survivor. Dark Heresy: The Lathe Worlds is one of my favorite Dark Heresy books. Hey, I'm glad you like it. Fun fact, it is actually one of the first things I pitched when I took over Dark Heresy in 2008, and it took until the very end of the line to come out. So there you go.
Better late than never, they say.
That's true. That's absolutely true. 100%. Oh, fun fact. Psykers in Dark Heresy were really strong. Really, really strong. They had a lot of versatility, a lot of power, a lot of raw power. What's the downside of a Psyker, though, Vera?
The downside of being a Psyker is that to channel any kind of psychic power, you need to tap into something called the warp, which is also where demons come from. It is the Imperium that is both everywhere and nowhere. It is the space outside of real space. It is a realm of possibility and great power and the gestalt psychic maelstrom that connects all thinking things. And it is a tempest of emotion from which demons can tear out. And when you open a little rip in it to perhaps molten beam, some kind of bulkhead, a demon could come out as well, as can all sorts of other horrible things.
Yeah, they often have ended entire campaigns because they have exploded into demons. There's a random table you roll on when you have a mishap when using your psychic powers. So yeah, this was a gotcha moment that I think a few people experienced playing Dark Heresy.
Yeah, there's this fun tension that arises from it because theoretically, any attempt to manifest a Psychona can end in a really horrible disaster.
Yeah, those were fun times. I read so many comments on the internet that I was just like, you know what? They're right. I mean, that does happen.
Yeah, and like you've got amazing crit tables as well. Just all sorts of things.
The crit table. When we get into the mechanics part, we got to talk about the crit tables. Frankly, Dark Heresy is okay. I know I'm a biased source, so here's your giant grain of salt to take with what I'm about to say. But in my opinion, Dark Heresy is one of the most influential licensed role-playing games of the 21st century. It is something that has fundamentally improved the Warhammer 40,000 setting and the trajectory of percentile-based RPG design, and has, in its time, which again was nearly 20 years ago at this point, has really opened the door for a lot of licensed IPs to become role-playing games, because prior to Dark Heresy, they were kind of hit or miss. And Dark Heresy is one of the first like really big explosions of like, hey, this is a licensed RPG that did really well. So
like, not only did it so well evoke the setting from which it comes from, it enhanced it, it built on the narrative, it gave people new ways to see how things work on the ground in 40K. It gave them ways to envision themselves as part of the setting, usually for worse and not better, but in exciting ways. And I think that its influence is evidenced by not only Dark Heresy 2e, which is its whole other production, but by the video game coming soon.
Well, so Dark Heresy's success launched no less than 5 spin-off role-playing games. Yeah, Rogue Trader, Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, Death Watch, Black Crusade, Only War, and then, the second edition, that's a lot. And it had 18 supplements for the first edition Dark Heresy, which that's also a very well supported game line.
Yeah, and they're all more or less cross-compatible is the amazing thing. If you look at the FFG systems, it is very easy, in fact, to pull material from one and use it in another. So you have a lot of books that all kind of work together. There is a very well-known actual play story wherein a party of Only War characters was put through the meat grinder, going through sheet after sheet after sheet after sheet. They were in this impossible last stand, and the final remaining character sheets who made it to the end were brought in as acolytes to the Inquisition, and thus began the Dark Heresy campaign.
There's one called the All Guardsmen campaign. I'm not sure if that's the one you're talking about or if that's different, but there is an All Guardsmen campaign on the web. You can look it up. It's pretty great.
I have read this. I forget if it's the same story, but these stories happen because of that cross-compatibility, because of how well this works together.
Oh, yeah. So we have a comment here from Arkin the Pillager, All Guardsman Party shout out. Woohoo. Yeah, we're going to talk about the memes. Yeah. We're going to talk about the memes for sure. So, yeah, there was the second edition of Dark Heresy unfortunately got kind of aborted. It only had like 5 or 6 supplements. And I can explain to you guys exactly why that happened right now, if you want to know. Because I was at Fantasy Flight Games when this happened, and we know I was literally there. I can tell you what happened was they got the license. Fantasy Flight Games got the license for the Star Wars license. And they wanted to do 2 things with the Star Wars license. They wanted to make role-playing games, and they wanted to make miniature games, which you may have heard of. There's X-Wing and Star Wars Legion and Star Wars Armada. Those are all Fantasy Flight games that they've made using that license. And here's the thing. Games Workshop does not give licenses for 40K to competitors. And because Fantasy Flight Games was about to start making miniature games and thus be a competitor in that market, they pulled the license. And frankly, Fantasy Flight knew this. I mean, I literally sat in a meeting and we're like, well, we're going to have to end the 40K license because Star Wars. And it was like this weird PowerPoint presentation with like a full flame effect on Star Wars when it came out. And I'll be honest, Star Wars is a hell of a license to get for a game company, so it made sense for them. But that's why the license ended for Fantasy Flight, which meant the end of Dark Heresy second edition. So
I assume it being a miniatures game played into this a little bit also, because they're selling minis, which are profitable.
Well, they're competing. Like Games Workshop doesn't have a problem. If you're not a miniatures, if you're not a guy who makes miniatures games and you want a license to do, something for Necromunda or Blood Bowl or whatever, Games Workshop will talk to you. They'll be like, yeah, sure, no problem. But if you are like somewhere in the middle of that process, you're like, oh, and we're also going to do a miniature game. That's the end. Full stop. Yeah, it's understandable. It's just, that's the reason why Dark Heresy ended.
RIP.
Indeed. Yeah. We've got a comment here from Brock 6000. Whoever heard of Star Wars? Yeah.
What's a Star War? We may do an episode on the Star Wars games themselves. That's the thing I know that Ross is quite interested in talking about. So if you're intrigued by this, please let us know. We're going to have a poll up in the Discord / on the YouTube after this, asking about possible upcoming episodes. Although there's worlds where next week might be a continuation of Dark Heresy, depending.
Oh, I should point out that something that's kind of infamous about Dark Heresy is that it had a high whiff factor. Whiff factor is a game design term meaning that player characters fail more often than they succeed. And typically, without any modifiers to your roll, you were looking at around a 30% chance of success to do just about anything. And a lot of the game boiled down to you as the player thinking of like ways to stack modifiers in order to get your number up to a point where you were more likely to succeed. This is just kind of a feature of the WIFRP game engine. It is a struggle. It's a struggle bus. Intentionally, it's a struggle bus. And, you know, I mean, there's an appeal to it because you are succeeding despite the odds. But it does frustrate a lot of people, and I do get that.
Well, it provides the right tone, right? Like, wow, our characters sure are stressed out and can't do anything right. I mean, yeah, kind of.
Well, this is something that was addressed, of course, in Rogue Trader and then Death Watch with a lot higher stats and skills, and your base chance to succeed went higher in those games. But anyway, yeah, that's something I thought was important to bring up. And then, what do you want to talk about next, Vera?
Ooh, we could talk about like we talked a little bit about player agency and like the big concepts, but I think that I'm curious to know like what lens you were viewing through the design process, like how to bring about these things. Because I assume that kind of struggle bus scenario is sort of what weaves into this. Like, how do you tune that? What was the genesis of making things hard on people, of making corruption so prominent?
Well,
this is
go ahead.
It's a big question. Is like, how do you bring through the tone of a setting in like a licensed game?
Well, for that, we need to talk about the history of Dark Heresy. So the development process of this was a real tumultuous thing. Basically, so the game came out in January of 2008 from Black Industries. Black Industries was a subset of Black Library. It was a internal group in Games Workshop. But before that, it was actually a game that was developed by a lot of people that you may or may not know from Green Ronin, who were hired. Green Ronin was a lot of Green Ronin guys were working on second edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and a ton of those names. If you open up any second edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay book, you'll see a lot of names that are usually associated with Green Ronin, and came over to do this prototype of Dark Heresy. And the prototype, well, I've seen files. It was an admirable attempt, but it did not at all capture Warhammer 40,000. I remember seeing in the prototype they started initially with a lot of the career options that you could get from Warhammer Fantasy, but with a slightly more science fiction-y approach. Like they had one that was like shuttle pilot or astronaut, which, by the way, if you're in 40K, you don't ever want to be an astronaut. which is just those are terms that just don't really fit the IP. Okay. And so Mike Mason, Owen Barnes, and Kate Flack are the people that looked at this and said, we've got to do something. Mike Mason basically said, we've got to do a rescue mission to save this game because it is not at all 40K. And so they scrapped the external team. They transitioned entirely to the in-house designers, and they adopted the percentile system from WIFRP second edition, which would define the mechanical identity of the line.
So I have an identity question.
Yeah.
Was the initial premise of this the Inquisition? Was it Dark Heresy as such, or was it just a role-playing game set in the 40K universe?
It was Dark Heresy, and you were agents of the Inquisition. So that was definitely something. This was announced. Games Workshop, I think, announced it in 2006, and the process went through 2007, which is when Mike Mason came over, and he was in charge of their Games Day events, and then he took over Black Industries. I would love to get Mike on this show to talk about this because it's got to be a crazy story. But he came over and was like, "Yeah, no, we got to fix this."
We got an observation from Necro as well. Between Dark Heresy, Mordheim, Dreadfleet, Mana War, not to mention Fantasy, The Old World, Age of Sigmar, 40K, 30K, and so many more, Games Workshop loved making many different licenses to compete with themselves. I would say there's like different ranges within these, though. Like I think all of these games accomplish different things aesthetically and have different energies. There's a lot of Games Workshop verse, however, for sure.
Well, I over on Lorebeards 40K, I am desperate to do like a history of Games Workshop episode because a lot of this has to do with where the company was at the time. And something that a lot of people don't know is that Games Workshop was originally founded to distribute Dungeons and Dragons in the UK. That was its whole purpose. And so role-playing games are foundational to Games Workshop. And they built, they actually made some of their own products. There's a superhero role-playing game called Golden Heroes from the 80s that they made. They made official supplements for Traveler, in case you didn't know that, which I was shocked when I found that out. And they made board games like Oi, Where's Me Leg, which a few people may know of as well. Then they got started doing the miniature game stuff, which is where they really took off. And the design mindset back then was like, let's make more games. Let's get more, it was a lot of throw things at the wall, see what sticks kind of mentality. So that's where you get, Mordheim, the original Man of War, Blood Bowl. But over time, and there's also been like different eras of leadership in Games Workshop. Like they narrowed focus considerably in the 90s, and then they narrowed focus even more in the early 2000s. And now they're very, very clear on what Games Workshop is and what it does. And they've left a lot of that history and stuff behind. But yeah, there's very good reasons why all of these different licenses of games exist. And frankly, a lot of it is just because they're really cool and people love them.
Yeah, they're cool and they're quite distinct from one another, and they're numerous. But like Mordheim is a really distinct game, right? People still talk about Mordheim. Everyone loves Mordheim. Man of War. We pulled a little bit from Man of War for some of the Cthulhu book stuff in fantasy recently. Like these are enduring legacy-wide. So
Zero Daimu says Gith Yankee. Yes, good call. If you are a D&D fan and you like the Gith Yankee and the Gith Zerai, those things would not exist without Games Workshop. They were published in White Dwarf as part of their coverage of D&D role-playing games at the time. And all of these monsters that they put into their White Dwarf issues eventually got collected into a volume called the Fiend Folio for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s. And then they've just propagated since then. So yes, you can thank Games Workshop for the Gith Yankee and the Gith Zerai, which are featured in Baldur's Gate 3.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah.
So that takes us back to
sorry.
Anyway, but this is all relevant though, because this is again a business call to shake things up and to bring in the percentile system to make it distinct in this way, similar to Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. And
so I was saying Mike Mason takes over 2007. He takes over early, and by December of 2007, they made 200 numbered copies that sold out in 6 minutes. And to basically rebuild an entire game in 10 months is a pretty good achievement. That's a heck of an achievement, especially you look at the artwork and the layouts. I think Mason actually did some of the layout too. I'll have to ask him. But yeah, it's a really big achievement to make that game happen in such a short amount of time. Then the standard edition was January 25th, 2008. They sold 30,000 copies on pre-order, which is a commercial triumph for 2008. That's a big deal. Role-playing games were kind of in a slump in that era. This is pre-Critical Role, so 30,000 copies was huge in that era, and it was a massive thing. But between January 28th, which is the end of that month, and February, so it's like a couple of weeks, Games Workshop shut down all of Black Industries and ended all sales of Dark Heresy, which I remember I was there at the time. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? This game is so awesome. What's going on? And it turns out that they decided to license it out to a different company, which would be Fantasy Flight Games, who picked up the license in around March, I think. And then I was hired and working on it by June of 2008.
And that's where the 1E of Dark Heresy came from, is this era.
Exactly. So you were talking about like the struggle bus mechanics and things like that. Well, because it's based on WIFRIP, and that's where a lot of that comes from. Although Mike could give a lot more detailed answer on this, but essentially it's because it's built on the foundation of Warhammer Fantasy, and they liked the idea of keeping things very, very small, very, very local, very, very limited. 40K is, of course, it's a galaxy-wide thing, and Games Workshop tends to be like, hey, if you're going to play in our sandbox, pick a little corner of that sandbox and do things there. We're the only ones that play with the whole sandbox. And so it fits the approach favored by Games Workshop. It fit the mechanics that Mason had handy to replace what had come in the prototype. It was just a natural fit.
Yeah, in this case, that corner of the sandbox is all of Calixis, which is a little more expansive in scale than perhaps Locale and Wolfrip might be. But
it's the biggest single role-playing game setting for Warhammer 40,000 ever. Because after that, it was all, we had to get smaller and smaller. And I think when I did Wrath of Glory, we were limited to a single system, for example. So yeah, Calixis was huge. And one of the best things about it is it was actually based on stuff that Dan Abnett had written for his Eisenhorn novels, because the Scaris sector, which is where Eisenhorn takes place, is right next to the Calixis sector. So Dan and a guy called Nathan Long, who's another Black Library author, they're the guys that built a lot of the bones that became the Calixis sector.
Yeah, and that's fantastic because of this overlap you have. Like if you have the Rogue Trader books, you can go a little bit out of known space. If you're familiar with Abnett, you can head one system over. There's a lot of potential here to really build out complex weaving narratives, which is pretty appropriate, I would say, to being an agent of the Inquisition, who are involved in all sorts of intrigues and plots and conspiracies.
Yeah, what can you enlighten us about your experiences with Dark Heresy?
Yeah, I came into Dark Heresy not knowing much about 40K, like 10 years back. And I did obscene amount of research because I wanted to play a demonologist. So not only was I reading novels in the 40K verse, I was reading Black Library material, I was reading all the source books cover to cover. I was reading real world religious theory about eisegesis and exegesis to interpret the word of the emperor in ways that would condone doing sort of experimental things for the sake of sealing daemons and such. And I came in as a scribe of the Inquisition who had once been possessed and was no more, who was part of a radical inquisitor's retinue who wanted to keep it sort of subtle that she had been afflicted as such at one time. There are several Ordos of the Inquisition that have methodologies that are, let's say, outside the bounds of what's considered broadly acceptable, but as long as that is kept secret, they're the only ones with the real agency, the real authority to say, no, you can't do that, which is why Inquisitors often go into conflict with one another. But it was great fun because my character's existence was a black mark on the reputation of her Inquisitor, should anyone find out. So I got to play directly into these different conflicts within the Inquisitors as an organization, because as an organization, they are factional, they are fractious, and her particular Ordo, the Ablationist Inquisitors are self-hating, use methodologies that are totally unacceptable basically anywhere outside of the most radical corners, and they hate every other radical and think they themselves are damned, and it's a lot of fun. So
I groaned audibly the first time I heard this information. I was like, not an ablationist. Oh God.
Yes, the worst possible person. It's great.
Well, I mean, there's maybe worse than ablationists, but they're pretty like so the deal with ablationists is that they believe that to fight chaos they must use chaos, and they believe that the use of chaos damns them personally. So it's a lot of martyrdom. It's like, I am taking this corruption upon myself in order to fight corruption, and by doing so I have lost any hope of redemption. And it's pretty bleak if you think about it, you know.
So I got to play this this young woman who had been possessed as a pretty young girl and managed to, because she has like a lot of psychic aptitude, remove the demon herself, and had been told for a very long time that she was super damned no matter what, and that she had better do her best for the Emperor anyway. So playing a real zealot who had basically no hope was a great deal of fun. She is considered my most unpleasant character by everyone in my group. She was very happy all the time. It was great.
Ricardo Andre, my excellent debate partner, on the Lore Seekers community. He points out that don't worry, the Oblationists are just the Herusians at home. We have Herusians at home. It's the Oblationists.
It's not heresy. It's just it's radical. It's radical. We're getting really rad with it.
Sotek rightly reminds everyone, do not spam the word for the giveaway because that is bad and it will mess things up. Once and only once, put in the exclamation point heresy, all lowercase, if you want to enter the giveaway. So, what should we talk about next?
Well, I'm curious to know about like what motivated certain design choices in 40K, because rather in Dark Heresy, because there are a lot of elements of the Inquisition that are brought forward through mechanics, and I think that as we get into the development history, it might be cool to explore some of these unique systems that I think really distinguish Dark Heresy.
Yeah, for sure. So mechanically, some of the most interesting things about it, it was one of the first things that introduced the idea of, well, this was a topic that was going around a lot in the game design area of the early 2000s, which was the idea of degrees of success. It's not just whether you succeeded or failed, it was by how much did you succeed or fail. And Dark Heresy had a rule that people really, really liked, where your degrees of success on an attack roll, you could actually replace a damage roll with that. So what could happen is you could roll a really good attack, like I rolled a 0-1, like a critical, bang, I hit the guy. But your roll for damage could be absolute crap. And again, remember that accomplishing things in this game was difficult. So it was a real feel bad moment for you to hit your 30% and then do nothing. But the degrees of success mechanic, what it meant was that you could say, okay, I succeeded by 4 degrees, so my minimum roll of damage is 4. And that really helped move things up a little bit on that. But the corruption and insanity mechanics were also a big deal, because it provided for this idea that your character would get worse over time as well as getting better.
Yep.
And can you talk about the insanity and corruption tables? I assume they were part of your campaign.
Oh yeah. So the gist of it is that certain experiences can result in testing against corruption, testing against insanity, and you must find out whether your character's mettle is enough to endure the moment. This concept is iconic. I believe, without any evidence, that if you're familiar with Darkest Dungeon, the game where you venture into horrible pits and are tested against all sorts of terrible beasts, the resolve mechanic in this game is related, because you build up your meter, you hit a threshold of corruption or insanity, and then you find out what exactly happens to your character. And these things can be very bad, because not only are mutations often visible, they are often crippling, they are often disfiguring, and they are always cause for rejection from the Imperium as a whole. If you are discovered as a mutant, you are a heretic automatically. It is Heretica's Majoris to be a mutant in the setting. So by virtue of involving yourself with these things, you invite upon yourself mutation and madness and become less functional as a person, perhaps.
I will say that the percentile system is it's cool because it provides intuitive transparency. If you have if you have a 35 ballistic skill, you have a 35% chance of succeeding in a shot. That's easy to tell on the dice. We talked about the degrees of success, and now that the question that you had, Vera, about like the high failure rate, I believe this reinforces the game's horror atmosphere. Characters were fallible investigators. They were confronting threats far beyond their capabilities, not super heroic saviors, and that was very reinforced by the way the mechanics worked.
When you're rolling a 30 to attack and the Daemonette is rolling a 75, it is very obvious what the gap is.
Precisely.
Maybe if you and all of your friends flank her and get close enough to be affected by her aura of corruption and also be in arm's reach of her claws, you can have a 1 in 5 chance to successfully damage the thing if you can get past its unreal nature. So it feels dire, it feels scary, and it adds pressure.
I would like to address a comment really quick. Sarmelian Bloodweaver 4789 asks, what's the giveaway for? The giveaway is for a signed copy of the first edition of Dark Heresy, the Fantasy Flight edition, not the Black Industries edition. It is signed by me, the lead developer, even though my name is not in that book. And we talked about why. But nevertheless, I have the authority as lead developer of the line to say you get a free fate point, and that's what that signature block is for, with that little checkbox. So it's not just a signature; it's actually like a small meta advantage in your game. That's what the giveaway is for.
This could be the thing that wins the entire campaign for you. So consider. Oh, fate is a wonderful thing to talk about. Also, it's relevant to Woofrup as well. But wanted to highlight Brock's comment also.
Hey.
Thanks so much. Does Dark Heresy highlight the satire of the Imperium? Is it something a GM needs to keep in mind or inherent from how brutal the authorities are?
So I would say the satire in Dark Heresy is, well, it's certainly not on the level of some of the earlier Rogue Trader products from, sorry, not the Rogue Trader roleplay game, the Rogue Trader edition, the first edition of Warhammer 40,000. It's probably closer to the satire of third edition onwards, I would say, where it's present, but it's mostly shown in the brutality and oppression of the Imperium. One of the things we tried to do to highlight that satire was we brought in a lot of memes from places like the Traditional Games channel on 4chan and a few other places where I would find a fun Easter egg or a story about a character. There's an acolyte named Grendel who has a whole story about like how he was so badass, and I was like, that's great, and I put him in Dark Heresy as a fun little nod to that, to keep that satire element present. So
I've heard of Grendel and the Knife. I've heard of this.
Yeah, well, he's canonical in 40K now, so there you go.
Also a fantastic actual play story. They're a handful. And I think that Dark Heresy's iconic nature is cemented by this. Like, if it weren't such a cool system, you wouldn't have all of these stories of amazing things happening. The fact that Grendel succeeding against Daemons and Chaos Space Marines with a knife is so impressive is because of this degrees of success system, is because of how visible the difficulty of what he was doing was. Like, degrees of success is so good. We still use this today. We use this in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It is still the system, right?
And fate points allow you to re-roll a failed test, avoid death by burning a fate point permanently, or you can gain narrative advantage based on your character roll.
Yeah, they represent the favor of the Emperor. Haha. Hopefully. Some god or another is looking out for you, and you can cheat death a few times.
Biofoot 7874, thank you for your support. Fishman, I knew it. It's always Biofoot when it comes to Fishman.
Hashtag Fishman?
Hey, Vera, are you familiar with this?
We may have made some allusions to Fishman in the Echo Thief books.
Well, yeah, it's a thing over on the Lorebeards Warhammer side. It's what the Warhammer Fantasy side of Lorebeards as well. And Biofoot is very common about bringing it up in the 40K stream. So thank you for once again reminding us of the Fishman.
We all love the Fishman.
Yeah, then there was Righteous Fury, which was a rule that basically said if you roll maximum damage, you get to roll again. When a damage die rolls its maximum value, which is usually a 10 on a 1d10, then you could get additional damage or deliver critical hits, which the critical hits are really fascinating in this game.
They are pretty cool. Critical hits hit hard. There are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful crit tables.
So yeah,
yeah.
Go ahead. You go. It's fine.
There's the gore galore. It's wonderful. I get excited about this.
The critical hit system is one of the most recognized features of Dark Heresy. Basically, the core rulebook had 8 pages devoted to critical hit tables arranged by damage type. And each hit location was listed here. Now, the descriptions of these were the most over-the-top, gory things, and I loved them. I loved them so much. Like, you could take an energy hit to your arm that would literally boil the marrow in the bones of your arm and turn your arm into a frag grenade as it exploded with bone shards around you. And I was like, whoa, like. Getting a critical hit in this game meant that something really bad was about to happen.
No, you can die in ways that are so horrible they traumatize the people around you. Like, it's fantastic stuff. It's fantastic.
Here's one for you, Vera.
Does dark heresy imply possible light heresy? As a devoted radical, I would say that there is no such thing as light heresy. There's dark heresy, and there are creative solutions.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Fraser 6654. We appreciate your support. I should say in German, I love the title of the game. It's not Dark Heresy, it's Schattenjäger, which means shadow hunter. And I think that's actually cooler.
I quite like that, because that is sort of what it is. It's chasing shadows, and eventually you're at the tail end with the sun going down and you're chasing your own shadow.
So I think, yeah, that's, and then there's, so the career paths. If you're familiar with WIFREP, you kind of know what we're about to talk about. But if you're not, Vera, what are career paths in Dark Heresy?
Career paths are structured levels of advancement through which your character can go down, and they are named after specific themes and aesthetics, specific ideas in the setting, and you will proceed down them in order, advancing your character as you go. There are certain options and branches along these, but they provide a structured avenue of development for your character that represent different corners of the setting, and they are notably not things like astronaut and jet pilot. They are quite flavorful. We have elements of the ecclesiarchy. There are different psychic disciplines. There are elements of the guard, all sorts of things that are appropriate to the campaign. And furthermore, there are elite advanced career paths that have prerequisites that you can go down, further branches, all of which add up to making a character who really feels like they belong in the setting.
That's right. I should also say, like, the Dark Heresy main rulebook, which again, I did not have anything to do with. But the main rulebook won a ton of awards. It got Best Interior Art, Best Production Values, and Best Game at the 2009 Ennies, which is a role-play game industry award. And it received recognition. Basically, everyone who was playing role-playing games in 2008 kind of knew about this. It was a big deal. It was a commercial success. It was a critical success. And like I said, it kind of busted the door open for a lot of, Zero, we lost you. You're a green box. Oh, you're back. Okay.
My camera cut out.
The warp sucked you into a green box.
Well, I mean, look where I am, right? Like, come on. Uh-oh. Many such cases. Like, look at this.
Basically, even critics who didn't like the percentile system or the random tables and that stuff, they all recognized that the atmospheric contributions of Dark Heresy were big. This was a role-playing game that knew what it was aiming at and hit the target as far as the atmosphere, the feel, the vibes of being a low-level Inquisitional acolyte.
Yeah, and I would say that 40K owes a lot to Dark Heresy and the games that it spawned off of it for its development, for the sense of what it's like on the ground of the system, right? Because all of the games that contributed to this line kind of meshed together to give you a pretty robust idea of what life is like in a lot of corners of the Imperium that had not really been explored, because before your character was an acolyte, before they were in it, they were somewhere that was either kind of boring and oppressive in a secure way, or they were fighting in some horrible pit trying to survive, or they were on the front lines against all odds, enduring against the enemies of the Imperium. And all of these different origin stories give you a pretty good look at what life could be like.
Fun fact is that the majority of Warhammer 40K enthusiasts do come in from the miniature side, the miniature game. And in the miniature game, you have an engagement with the lore in that you have an army that is yours, and you usually tell a little bit of a story about that army and their history and everything. But it's very removed. You are the godlike general looking down at your troops, ordering them to attack, and that's cool. But it does leave you a gap in between what you experience and what the IP offers. Then there were the novels, which gave you a little more first person. You got to see their thoughts and fears and kind of learn what they were thinking and feeling in the universe. And that was good. That was getting you more depth, more immersed in what the grim darkness of the far future could offer. Video games had some very linear approaches to this as well. But when the role-playing game came out, this was the most intimate way to engage with the IP, because you were not just a general looking at troops. You were not just a player doing a quest in a video game, not even just like reading the story about a guy doing things in the setting. You were interacting with it. You were able to make choices, and you were able to see things on a level where the protagonist of a novel ordinarily wouldn't. Like, what do I eat when I'm hungry? Where do I sleep when I'm tired? And the roleplay game had to answer these questions. It was some very funny conversations that I had with the Games Workshop licensing team, because role-playing games in general don't make a lot of money, but they're huge. The Dark Heresy is a 400-page book, okay? And the licensing guys, they're the ones in charge of making sure it feels like 40K. So they have to spend a lot of time and effort on a product that doesn't actually bring a lot of money into the company, but they need to do it because it is the most significant, detailed way to see that IP. It's a lens that they needed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like the Dark Heresy rulebooks really fleshed out the Inquisition, for example, these different Ordos and the way they interact, the way they scheme and behave, and the structure of the Inquisition itself. And furthermore, Dark Heresy's, I believe, Book of Judgment, if you want to learn about the Adeptus Arbites, there are so many specific judgments and precedents for case law, as obtuse as that is in the Imperium. And if you want satire, there you go, because boy howdy is Judge Dredd proud of them. That is as cube core as penalties can be. You and your 3 generations are all going away because of the graffiti you performed on that Imperial tomb.
So we did have a comment asking like how the Owlcat game is going to do with this. I mean, I don't know because it hasn't out yet. Yeah, Mr. Vorn, thank you. What do you peeps think of what we've seen at the Owlcat Dark Heresy so far? Sorry if it's already been just discussed, just arrived back. We haven't actually got too deep into that. And there's not much to say because it's not out yet. But go ahead, Vera.
Boy, am I excited. I'm so excited. I really want to play it. I really want to play it. I think that I know Ross is also, there will be some of this game happening in some space that is Lorebeards related. I can promise you that.
Absolutely. Well, they're doing a detective journal system. I know this.
Oh.
Which is going to be where players collect evidence. They cross-reference testimonies, analyze clues, draw conclusions. That's something that second edition Dark Heresy was really focused on as well. This is something that first edition didn't kind of needed. I wish we'd had it. But second edition introduced more investigative approaches. And my understanding, at least, here's a giant grain of salt because the game's not out yet. My understanding is that the computer game will feature a lot of investigative stuff as well.
I'm so excited. I don't think I've been this hyped up for a video game to come out since Vermintide 2, which I was losing my mind over.
Well, if the investigation system is anything like Dark Heresy second edition, you could condemn innocents or miss an actual heretic based on incomplete or misinterpreted evidence. So there's consequences reinforcing the Inquisition's fallibility and the moral weight of your judgment. So I think that would be really fun. Look at your face, Vera.
If it is the perfect game that I hope it is, there should be an option to, as soon as the investigation opens and the planetary governor tells you, no, you can't do that, you should be able to brandish the rosette, open fire on him and his guards, siege the entirety of the planetary government, and then depart saying, job well done.
Oh, Hawk says he has alpha access, and he says the journalist system is very interesting. Oh, okay.
Very nice.
That's great. And Mr. Warren says, I met some of the videos or blogs they put out. Sorry, the alpha detective stuff looked really cool. I'm trying not to spoil myself.
Same.
And that's weird because I know more about Dark Heresy than probably anyone else. So it's weird for me to want to not have spoilers. And I hope you can understand where I'm coming from, where I treasure that joy of discovery. So I'm like, I don't want to watch the blogs. I don't want to see the videos. I want to just go in and experience it. But maybe Vera has. Vera, can you answer?
No, dude, I'm the same way.
Okay.
maybe that's the wrong answer, but I mean, if it is co-op, we can play. That'd be fun.
I'd love to co-op. Necroplayer 97.
So cool.
As difficult as it could be, I would love to try and play a person who came from Krieg. Oh, a Krieg guardsman would be super fun. As a current or former Kriegsman, that feels fun. Yeah, shovel beams for everyone.
That is a fantastic character concept for Dark Heresy, by the way, because having your sort of fatalism denied, you've been pulled away from your purpose, from your brothers in battle. You are now responsible for a very different kind of endeavor, which is also kind of perhaps fatalistic and ultimately doomed, but in a less obvious way. It's a cool chance to be a fish out of water, to apply some practical skills that the members of the squad might not have, to be a good acolyte, perhaps, or not.
Well, the guardsman is a base class, a base career in Dark Heresy First Edition, and it wouldn't surprise me if you could play a guardsman. Maybe I don't know if Krieg would be one of the options, but it seems likely that you could play a version of that for sure.
You could make it work.
Yep. We got a quote from James Wu asking what he missed. Well, we're talking about Dark Heresy, buddy. Or sorry, Jake Wu. Jake was to say, everyone.
Hey.
Yeah, we're talking about Dark Heresy, the role-playing game, if you're just joining us now. And there is a giveaway going for a signed copy of the first edition. If you want to participate, you need to go into the chat and you need to list exclamation point heresy, all undercase, all lowercase. Do this only once and only once. Because if you spam it, Sotek will be very angry and it will not work. So don't do that. Anyway, so Dark Heresy, the role-playing game, and we have gone through a lot of the basics of what it is. We've gone through a lot of the basics of what it was, the mechanics. What's something else you'd like to talk about?
I suppose we could talk about some of the spin-offs and supplements, just how that's unfolded from the success, because there was a whole development cycle there, I'm sure. There was a whole range of games, right, that went from quite compatible, such as Only Wars in the All Guardsman Party example, to kind of not, such as Death Watch.
So, yeah, originally, the plan was from Black Industries. This was, I believe, something pitched, either pitched by Games Workshop in 2006 or pitched by the Black Industries team in 2008. I honestly don't know which one is correct, but somewhere between those two moments, they decided that their first three games were going to be Dark Heresy, which is a game about the Inquisition, Rogue Trader, which is obvious what that game's about, and Death Watch, which was going to be their Space Marine game. And this was the plan. And when I got hired in 2008 by Fantasy Flight, I knew this was the plan. And when I walked in, they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I think we should follow the plan. I think that's a really good idea. So we did a spinoff called Rogue Trader, then we did a spinoff called Death Watch, and then there were two more. We did a spinoff called Black Crusade and one called Only War. Fun fact, Only War was meant to be a Dark Heresy supplement, and the more we noodled around with it, the more we were like, no, this is a full game. Let's just make it a full game. There was just too much material for a single, no matter how, I mean, it would have to be an enormous supplement. And by the time we finished writing down what we wanted to do, we were like, yeah, no, it's got to be a game line.
Oh, how intentional was the cross compatibility? Did you kind of know that it was going to be a blended, like, super system with all of these books interacting and having mechanics pulled from what and where?
So at the time, the instruction from Games Workshop was they liked narrow but deep slices of the IP. Mm-hmm. They wanted a focused approach, a focused look at an individual piece rather than something that connected everything together. I remember having conversations with them about similar game systems that had cross compatibility, like the World of Darkness games.
Right. Yeah.
And Games Workshop was like, yeah, but really what we need is what they really wanted was the deep, narrow slice of their IP that people could get a immersed in. So the cross compatibility was a ideal. It was a goal that we aimed at, but it was lower on the totem pole than getting that deep, focused slice correct. And my feeling was at the time, and again, things change over time, but this is 20 years ago. At the time, my feeling was that people generally played a specific game in that crossovers were more rare than they were common. And so we were aiming for, Rogue Trader is compatible with Dark Heresy, which is true. But it didn't fit like a puzzle piece. You had to do a little work, And then when Deathwatch came along, we were like, yeah, this is really pushing the envelope of what D100 can handle. If I could go back in time and do it again, I would probably maybe try to make them more compatible. They are compatible. It just takes a little work. And I think, I've explained why. So there you go.
I would say anybody who's going to try and combine them is happy to do that little bit of work, though. Again, my experience has been that it's very easy to make things mesh together. The hardest thing is teaching a Dark Heresy party how Rogue Trader's ship combat works. Those systems are complicated.
I've got a story I could tell about the rules for fighting in space. Mr. Vorn says Only War is the OnlyFans equivalent for 40K, I assume. No, it is not, but it's funny. I like that. It's very good.
I don't think they have that in 40K, not in a properly orthodox spire anyway.
Morning to Crescent says Only Bangs, which is guardsmen posing with explosives. I could see that like a morale calendar. It's distributed by the Munitorum along with ammunition crates.
Every other month is the commissar scowling.
Right.
They want to make sure you're not getting carried away or anything.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, yeah. Good times. Good times. So there's obviously the second edition was kind of a spin-off. It only had 5 or 6 supplements, unfortunately, so it feels a lot less robust than the first edition does. And then there's a spiritual successor, Imperium Maledictum, which is fairly new, but I think you've worked on it.
I have not worked on Imperium Maledictum, but I have played it, and it has a lot of similarities. Like, it remains in the lineage, right? Well, of course, because it's a Dark Heresy RPG, but there's a few interesting changes. It has a warp charge system for the Psychona that has been, I believe, controversial in some places, because in the same way that the perils of the warp are one of the scariest things in the entirety of Dark Heresy as a system, in Imperium Maledictum, Psyker is sort of consistent and predictable as long as you're careful. You are able to purge your warp charge with the base rules, at least, in a way that makes it kind of reliable to manifest powers, as long as you're willing to make a zone kind of unpleasant for a while. There's a vent system that I believe is inspired in some ways by the Darktide game systems, which again are themselves kind of drawing from the Dark Heresy RPG. So there's some interesting crossover here. There's a lot of connections between different elements and expressions of the setting.
Something I think is fun is that a lot of people look at Dark Heresy and they say it's Call of Cthulhu in space. Well, I've got good news for you. Mike Mason, the designer of the system, is a major Call of Cthulhu game designer as well.
Boy, does that make sense.
Yeah. There is... You can look at the Venn diagram of Call of Cthulhu and Dark Heresy, and they overlap in quite a bit of ways. They're both investigating evils, sometimes cosmic evils. They're both generally squishy when they come up against enemies, and they both have to deal with madness and corruption, just in different ways. So yeah, there's a strong influence, I think, that goes both ways with that, simply because of the Mike Mason connection. Although if we get him on the show, which I'd really like to do, I would like to ask him about that.
I would be curious too as well. Yeah, I mean, if you'd be willing to come in, I'd like to cover Call of Cthulhu itself at some point. We had talked about discussing that and perhaps Delta Green at some point in the future.
Got to talk about Delta Green. It's my favorite role-playing game I've never played.
Well, we're going to do one-shots as well at some point. We're going to start doing those, I believe, on Wednesdays for odd games, and using that as a jumping board to discuss games we play. So we're going to have the example of the thing in action.
Absolutely. So what does Dark Heresy do for Warhammer 40K? That's probably a really good question, I think, that we should answer. First of all, it gives you a lot of it gives the setting some geographic complexity with the setting of the Calixis sector, because there were wheels within wheels, factions competing against each other on a scale that is generally overlooked, except in a lot of Dan Ebnett's Inquisitional books. It was an extrapolation of a lot of themes and tropes that he put out.
Yeah, like the greatest obstacle that you face when you're writing for 40K is scale. It is unfathomably huge. A spire has 1 trillion people in it. The complexity is as such that half the idea of the administratum is that it's never going to get anything done. To write stories that are sensible and possible to follow in this kind of setting is challenging. You need a discrete range where things are happening, or else you need to make the narrative travel along with a group of characters who visit various locations and primarily are on their void ship. Dark Heresy went out of its way to carve out a whole sector that made sense. It provided a discrete, understandable, and navigable area of the universe that you could explore and that had consequences that might reflect on other planets. Something that happened on Malphi might be relevant elsewhere. It was a environment where you could do things that had ramifications that were tangible, which is, I think, really important for a tabletop role-playing game, that your actions matter, that the things that you do or don't do, in the case of the Inquisition, can have knock-on effects. And making that add up in 40K was like a huge gift to the way the setting is parsed by people.
This may seem funny, and I want to hear your opinion on it, Vera, but I think one of the things that it also offered was historical depth, because in 40K, you have a history with a lot of big events, but those usually take place very far apart from each other in terms of geographic location across the galaxy, and also are generally in eras separated by hundreds, if not thousands of years. The events of the Calixis sector that you could get involved with and understand the historical precedence of was just a little 2,000-year period with some very detailed eras that were maybe 30 years or even 2 years long.
Yeah, like it lends itself to this real juice that you can sink your teeth into when you're making a character. You can really ground yourself in the environment. There are enduring organizations like the Ordo Calix that have cool traditions that lend themselves to character creation and to particular aesthetics. You feel like what you're doing matters, which is important, because 40K is sort of a setting that resists the idea of individuals, for the most part, having a lot of agency, right?
There's even a Black Library novel written by Sandy Mitchell, the guy who wrote the Comics Arcane novels. That is a Dark Heresy novel in the Calixis sector. I forget the title of it, unfortunately. It might just be Dark Heresy. I don't know. And I'm not sure if it's even still in print, but there is one.
Well, that's how, the setting's so rich. Like when you have authors who want to like just occupy it and flesh out different corners and see what there is. The breadth of information that you have about what's going on in Calixis, the way that the planets play into one another, it all really, it lends it what it needs to be a jumping off point. Like all of these other regions of space joining it mean that you can really build out a game there. You can build out a whole campaign, many stories.
If you guys are familiar with Warhammer Fantasy, and I assume a lot of you are, because obviously Sotek and Andy built up this channel, the witch hunters of the Empire are very similar to the Inquisition in 40K. So if you can imagine witch hunters in space, that's kind of what you're talking about. But what Dark Heresy did is it really fleshed out the institutional detail of the Inquisition. It gave you an idea of what the operations of the Inquisition look like from the standpoint of someone very low in the totem pole as opposed to someone very high in power. It gave you an idea of the bureaucratic complexity, the factional infighting, the moral compromises that are inherent in that organization, and a lot of the material from the Calixis sector and its spinoffs have been incorporated into the main lore of Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah, because I think that kind of moral struggle and like how a person leans into battle against chaos, like what you can do on the ground, even with as much agency as an acolyte or even an inquisitor has, is really one of the most interesting struggles in Warhammer, right? The battle against chaos, the battle against corruption is the main theme of every Warhammer setting. It is the central through line, and in Dark Heresy, you are at the epicenter of that fight. You are concerned directly with it.
I also want to point out that the Radical's Handbook, which is a supplement for Dark Heresy, really expanded on, well, not just the Radical's Handbook, but the Radical's Handbook and Dark Heresy in general added a lot of detail to the different Ordos, the minor Ordos of the Inquisition. So the Inquisition has three major Ordos: the Ordo Xenos, the Ordo Hereticus, and the Ordo Malleus, which deal with aliens, heresy, and
demons, like demonology in particular,
respectively. But there are dozens of minor Ordos, including the Oblationists, which we talked about. But there's also the Xanthites, who believe that chaos. The Xanthites, in my opinion, are actually worse than Oblationists. So there's that.
Yes, because they are delusional. Well, they're especially delusional.
They think that chaos is a tool that can be weaponized. There's the Phaeonites, who seek to transcend humanity through controlled corruption. Yeah, good luck with that. There's the Istvanians. The Istvanians, well, actually, the Istvanians were detailed elsewhere, if I remember right. They're the ones that think the Imperium can be strengthened through conflict. That they were expanded upon in Dark Heresy. They weren't created for it. The Recongregators, who want to reform the Imperium from within, and the Libracar, who want to pursue forbidden knowledge at any cost because they believe, as some people do today, that knowledge is power. Guard it well.
Yeah, and there are a handful of like really small organizations and the promise of many more. Like the idea that the Inquisition, which is meant to be the most empowered against chaos branch of the Imperium, is so at war with itself, is something that lends a lot of depth to the setting, because it means that even within this struggle against chaos, the people who are best equipped to deal with it, there is no amount of trust. There is constant infighting, constant strife. And I would say that is one of the themes of the setting, is that it's hard to trust anyone. It's hard to mount effective resistance. It's hard to find corruption when you're always suspecting within others, suspecting it within yourself.
Here's a fun fact. Just because, I was there at the time, I can tell you the sales performance of Dark Heresy was big. When I joined Fantasy Flight Games, the role-playing game department was two people. It was me and Jay Little, and Jay was in charge of Warhammer Fantasy. I was in charge of Dark Heresy. And within 3 years, we built that team to be around 8 or 9 people working on tons of games. Fantasy Flight went from a board game publisher to having an extremely robust role-playing game department with full-time designers. That's rare. That's extremely rare. At that time, I think the only people you could say had a full-time design team of that size was D&D, Pathfinder, and us. Maybe Chaosium, maybe. I'm not sure. But we were definitely in the top. We were in the top echelons of having a full professional team because of the success of Dark Heresy. It allowed Fantasy Flight to do that.
So Benjamin Fraser notes something cool here, which is an advantage that 40K RP has over Warhammer Fantasy, which is that you can add entire worlds for the game without feeling like you're taking liberties for the canon. Because even as well fleshed out as Calixis is, there are yet more planets within it, and you absolutely can do this. You could have a farming world that is nearby to a world that you've been exploring, and suddenly there's knock-on effects. Suddenly it's relevant, and because the sector is so well fleshed out in general, you can play into the ongoing struggles, the drama in the Tricorn Palace. You can do all of these things in ways that lend to the broader narrative of your game.
Because of Dark Heresy, we have Star Wars Edge of the Empire. Because of Dark Heresy, we have the 2D20 system, which you may be familiar with from Modiphius. That was created by Jay Little. As I mentioned, the only other guy in the department when I started. It's had an impact, obviously, on Imperium Maledictum, and it should be pointed out that the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu was 2014, so it came out. It was definitely influenced by, again, Mike Mason being involved, influenced by a lot of the stuff that happened in Dark Heresy.
Like this is flexible for a game. This is a good setting. This works really well because it's very hard. It's very hard to create an entire solar system, to create a whole sector yourself of planets that work together, that mesh together, that create a cohesive narrative. But when you have that, it is very easy to add locations that play into it effectively.
Yeah,
and Star Wars benefits from this, right?
Yeah, I should point out that this game is not flawless.
Nonsense.
This game is not flawless. Dark Heresy, especially first edition, has a lot of mechanical issues. Its combat is very complex. Although the critical tables are great, they take time to roll and adjudicate, and sometimes those rules weren't necessarily clear. It was very fiddly because you had to put in a lot of remember how I said that your whiff factor was high, 30% was like a usual thing you needed to do. It was fiddly because you were often searching for modifiers to that roll, and that took up time as well. If anybody who played Pathfinder first edition knows exactly what I'm talking about right now. The high failure rates were an issue. A lot of people didn't like that. The character advancement was, I mean, it was there. You did get more you got better and more skills and more things as you got higher experience points, but it didn't have that satisfying, like, I leveled up feeling. Right. Go ahead, Lou.
The granularity's downside is that improvement is incremental and very gradual. And I think in some ways the second edition changed how this felt a little bit with the way that talents were developed there, because you could get quite high impact ones that are certain packages of XP totals that did sometimes quite a lot for your build. As did elite advances in second edition, where you could pay in to become a stronger form of thing in some kind or another. There's a whole Inquisitor elite advance in a second edition that had a ton of associated talents that were all very high impact. Like the second you're an Inquisitor, boom, now you roll every skill at least at trained, because you're just that guy.
I think you're talking about Ascension, aren't you? No, is that second edition had that?
That's second edition.
Okay, yeah. So second edition, how do I put this? Part of the development for first edition was the idea that you could eventually graduate from being a nobody to a somebody.
Yes.
And we came out with this book called Ascension, which said, hey, would you like to play an actual Inquisitor or an actual Assassin or an actual, lots of things that actually had models in the tabletop game. You could actually play that. And what that meant is Ascension was it's got a split, it's got good and bad reactions for people. The criticisms are, it doesn't feel right, or it's not what I was looking for in Dark Heresy, because it is high power. It's definitely the, prestige class of its time. But there were other people who were like, I love it. Now I can finally play this guy that I've painted up a model for and things like that.
Yeah.
And second edition was very smart to incorporate that from the beginning rather than try and tack it on, which is what Ascension was. And I'm entirely responsible for that book, so blame me.
Well, second edition also abandoned the career path track, right? It made things a little more flexible in ways that are kind of obtuse. So like aptitudes are weird. Aptitudes are a weird system in second edition, wherein your character, based on where they're from or what they came into the Inquisition doing, they are just better at this kind of thing. They are better at strong things or willpower things. And you better be good at willpower things if you don't want corruption, because your willpower aptitude reflected like your ability to invest in the cool skill and so on that prevented you from going cuckoo bananas and covered in tentacles. So there were a couple of structural challenges that brought about as well.
Oh, we got a super chat here from Brock 6000. Where is the split in game from technology that everyone, the players, knows and uses versus the long lost high technology that the Mechanicum controls?
Thank you. This is a good question. There's one key example of archaeotech, which is one of the terms for this kind of thing in sort of built in, which is that rosette barriers often have some force field, and those are broadly archaeotech. Ross, in fact, has a field save right now. You have to reroll to see if you can get through. There'll be a flash of brilliant light.
It was kind of infamous in first edition that a lasgun was a hell of an amazing weapon, because most of the time you were armed with like gunpowder, black powder pistols or knives. Getting actual good gear, like even basic gear, like a las pistol, could be a big deal in Dark Heresy. Even high-ranking, very experienced acolytes might, if they were extremely lucky, have a plasma pistol.
Is the Dark Heresy rulebook where the legendary stub gun came from? That's just in 1911.
Probably that or the Inquisitor's Handbook. Yeah,
it's fantastic. We still have this. The Dark Tide game. You can now have dual 1911s as the Hive Scum. They have endured for 38,000 years.
The Hive Scum, so Scum in general were one of the basic classes of first edition Dark Heresy, and they got an upgrade which was very similar to a Necromunda figure called a Desperado, and that's what they ended up being called as Desperados. And I believe the Hive Scum in Darktide is also a Desperado, or is similar to a Desperado, in that he dual wields pistols. And yeah, if you want to look at like some really interesting, fun gear that isn't something you typically would equip on your Space Marine in the tabletop game, check out the Inquisitor's Handbook, because they went wild. They have all kinds of different stub pistols, auto pistols, hand cannons, las pistols, dueling las pistols, which I think are really cool. Yeah.
I think that the Inquisitor's Handbook, the Radical's Handbook, and Disciples of the Dark Gods have some of the coolest items in the entirety of 40K. I'm biased as a enjoyer of very rad things, but wow, are there cool things in there.
Oh, I should point out that if anybody here is a fan of the Black Library books written by John French, or is a fan of the Horus Heresy Black books written by Alan Bly, both of those gentlemen worked extensively on Dark Heresy and had a lot of writing credits to their name, including the core rule book, and including Inquisitor's Handbook, and including Disciples of the Dark Gods, which everyone seems to love. I love. It's probably my favorite supplement. And John and Alan did a fantastic job on that. So having fairly major Black Library authors involved, you know, Dan Abnett and Nathan Long to begin with, and then John French and Al Bly later on. Yeah, it was. I think there's a reason why Dark Heresy feels so 40K, at least the non-prototype version. All right.
I wouldn't mind like an astronaut class, but I think it belongs in a Black Crusade.
Very short-lived. Very short-lived. So the advancement was an issue. The high failure rates were an issue. The complexity was an issue. I think also the setting had some... the setting was difficult for some people to buy into entirely, because the grim dark nature of the game made it where heroics and moral choices that you ordinarily would find in like a Dungeons Dragons game, you know, they just weren't available. It required a more nuanced buy-in on the setting. Also, the specific power level of acolytes it's above ordinary citizens, absolutely, but it is far below anything that you'd find in a typical Black Library novel. So it could be there could be some dissonance there where you are a Warhammer 40K fan. You're like, oh, I can't wait to play as blank, you know, a commissar, or as a, you know, Sister of Battle or whatever. And then you get to Dark Heresy, you're like, wait, what? I can't play those guys? What do you mean?
Yeah, like in fantasy, you can play a High Elf, for example. You can play a Dwarfen Slayer. And even as a starting character, those are head and shoulders above, and well, not literally in the case of the dwarf, but they're pretty tough compared to a random guy off the street, right? And in Dark Heresy, you sort of are all that. So
we got a Exiled One member for 2 months. Thank you, Exiled One.
Thanks so much.
What's the fanciest pistol in Dark Heresy, Vera?
Ooh, I recall that I think it's even one of the Rogue Trader books, there are really fancy dueling pistols for the highborn nobility. And these are single shot ornate devices that are very fine and primarily for display, but they'll hurt. They'll do it. They're accurate, just not practical. And in terms of like literal fanciness, I would say that's it. You can also get a bolt pistol. So you get a Godwin Diaz bolt pistol, and those are pretty nice themselves in a very different way.
Yeah, for raw power, bolt weapons in Dark Heresy were awesome. For fanciness, though, I think the dueling las pistols are really, really fancy and cool. And the fact, actually, I believe there's one that hits like a hot shot las pistol, but it has that just one shot. It burns the whole clip and like bang, and you hit hard, but that's it. You're done. You're out of ammo, and you have to reload.
The Belasco. Thank you, guys. Yes. I knew I remembered that right somewhere.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you for bringing
Thanks
that up.
so much.
Nestor Vitumbra and Mornington Crescent. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, this is a bit of an aside, but because of course I have a very sacred person in my Dark Heresy game, my sort of disturbed, obsessive ecclesiarchy type trying to repent for her own damnation. She of course liked cherubim because that seems appropriate for that kind of character. And there were many jokes of getting the cherubim that followed around a Godwin Diaz baby gat, just a little cherubim-sized pistol. This was never allowed, but
okay, we got to. Do you want to read the super chat here?
yes, thanks so much, Aeromob. What is the equivalent of being a cool car and being a cool car guy in this setting? Well, this wound up. So there are land vehicles in 40K, of course. You can have a nice little ride. I think in this setting, the equivalent is being some kind of spire nobility and just having a nice car. You can have a nice ride. You can have a personal voidcraft that is pretty freaking fancy. Theoretically, you can have all sorts of luxuries. There are quasi-forbidden luxuries, like nightweave interiors in your personal voidcraft. That'd be impressive. It's a cloth that may be made from pain and sewn by the Drukhari. It is very pretty. You could have all sorts of fancy materials that might be made up from archaeotech or even xenotech. If you wanted to be really fancy and you aren't afraid of the Inquisition, which you should be, you could have some kind of Xenos craft that's been retrofitted by someone who is operating fully outside the bounds of the priesthood of Mars for your personal enjoyment, probably as a display piece, because no one can help you if you take that on radar of the Planetary Guard, but there are things you can do. So you could branch and talk about the economy also, because you got to have moolah to have a cool car and be a cool car guy in this setting, which is kind of the domain of a very small proportion of people who live in very tall houses.
I love that description of imperial nobility. I love it. I should add here that in Dan Abnett's books about the Inquisition, they have a thing called a gun cutter, which is like an Apache attack helicopter. Basically, it's got like a small compartment for people to ride in, and it flies around and has guns on it. It's a gunship. That would be, I think, the equivalent that I would look at is something like that, because not every planet's going to be something you can drive on, but most of them you can fly around on.
It is pretty cool to have an Apache.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, again, it's equivalent, but it's a, yeah, gravity. Are gun cutters grav vehicles? God, I'd have to check that out.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know. But yes, that's the answer I have for you, sir. Thank you for your support today.
I think it's a good question because it leads us into talking about the economy, which we've sort of brought up in terms of getting gear and the challenges of getting good gear that isn't a 1911.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this topic.
So I have the most experience with the economy in Dark Heresy 2nd edition, which is based on a stat called influence. And influence is also a thematic concept in Warhammer because influence represents, in an abstract sense, the broad authority that your party has, that your character has to get things done. And this can range from things like making someone do what you want because, or else, look at my rosette, or buying stuff. And this was, I think, one of the most controversial mechanics in 2nd edition because it replaced the economy entirely. This concept of influence and rolling your influence stat to obtain items was how you got stuff. And furthermore, influence was a required stat for things like becoming an inquisitor. You, in fact, needed to have a certain amount of influence, but you could also burn influence or lose influence. Influence was a stat you could have decreased by messing up, by expending it to bring in the boys. If you wanted to play as a space marine in Dark Heresy 2E, too bad, unless you summon one, unless you call in the cavalry and burn influence permanently to shock troop drop a couple of guys to help you out with your problem and play as them for a few missions.
Yeah, influence is obviously based on the profit factor, which is from the Rogue Trader game, where that was my creation because I didn't want merchant princes to have to worry about pocket change, and we just made up a stat. We're like, it's called profit factor. Do you have a high enough profit factor? Then you can afford it. and influence. Course, go ahead.
They showed up in the Rogue Trader video game recently. Also, would you tell us about like profit factor, just in a little more detail to prep for this?
Okay, I can just. This is not a show about Rogue Trader, to be clear. But yes,
just a little taste of Rogue Trader.
Sure. So profit factor was a representation of your overall wealth as a rogue trader. It was a number that you could roll. It basically was a stat and a resource, kind of like influence. You would make a roll on it, and if you rolled under your profit factor, you could afford the thing that you wanted. The game master would impose modifiers based on how big, how awesome, how expensive, how rare the thing you were trying to get was, but it never meant that you just couldn't buy it. It just meant either it wasn't available. Well, I mean, in some cases it meant you couldn't buy it, but generally what it meant was that it either wasn't available or you didn't know the right person to talk to if you failed that roll. Because again, you were a merchant prince in Rogue Trader. You were a guy who had his own ship. You had galaxy spanning business ventures. You know, the idea that you couldn't afford a las pistol was ludicrous. But if you wanted like a Belasco dueling pistol, like a really, really nice dueling pistol, the game master might say, okay, make a profit factor at like +10. And if you get it, that means they have one and they're willing to sell it to you and you can just buy it. And obviously you're not actually crossing off any resources to do that. But then there were cases when you could permanently burn profit factor in order to acquire a thing that you really, really, really wanted.
Yeah, in the background of this, you've got like huge shipments of grain and people and whatever else. You're like moving passengers, you're moving goods, resources, all sorts of stuff. The logistics of your entire dynasty are behind this, so it makes a lot of sense. In Dark Heresy, you don't have that.
No.
That's not a thing that you have. You might have a rosette.
So fun fact, 40K didn't really have a term for money before Dark Heresy. And Dark Heresy, again, core rulebook, I don't take credit for this, but the core rulebook for Dark Heresy established that in the Calixis sector, the unit of monetary exchange was called thrones. These were golden coins that represented, I believe, a day's labor on one of the agri worlds, if I remember right. And these thrones were the money that you would spend. So if you had the gelt, was what they also called it. If you had the gelt, you could get the thing. But typically acolytes did not have very much of this money. And like D&D, this was tracked as like, I have this many thrones on your character sheet, and you would spend them to acquire things. But again, fun fact, this was not there in 40K. You never saw anybody buy anything before that. So
yeah, I do like there being a currency though, because it incentivizes you to be corrupt. It incentivizes you to just take money from people that you're interrogating. Maybe that'll have consequences. It's sure not a subtle way to operate.
I remember a lot of games of first edition Dark Heresy where we were frantically searching the bodies for anything we could take and sell because money was really hard to come by as an acolyte.
Yeah, and that adds a cool kind of cool kind of conflict, right? It adds tension because your boss expects you to get it done, and you better get it done, but you don't have the resources to do anything. So, figure it out.
Nestor Vitumbra says, "Shut up and take my thrones." Interrogator Fry visiting the armories of Gunmetal City. Yes. Very good.
Is the Dark Heresy 2nd edition abstracted all of this, but without the backing of like infinite surplus of goods to trade. It was just sort of vibes based, which made a lot of sense for some characters. Like I played Imperial Nobility, who was still affiliated with her resources at home because of course the Inquisitor wants to keep that. That's the Inquisitors now. Like you've got a puppet noble, great, and we could leverage that in some situations. The way this would unfold at the table was kind of obtuse because like what you rolled influence for ranged from convincing governors to do things all the way down to purchasing a las pistol at a shop. So
yeah, Micah points out it is strange that acolytes don't get paid, but hey, who am I to judge the great and holy Inquisition? You know, yeah. Again, I didn't write the core book. This is just how it came out. But
they get paid. It's just that the administratum won't process it for 100 years.
Your great grandson might inherit some money. Would you like to read the super chat?
Yes. Thank you so much, Necroplayer, for a fun idea indeed. A create your own type stream might be statting out origins, careers, and or background hooks. Yeah, I think there's a lot of room to do little splashes for things potentially that are thematic if people have things they're particularly interested in. We're also going to be starting up the Lorebeards Patreon before too long, where we might upload PDFs of things, little independent videos about cool concepts. So we're working that out still, but things of this nature could happen in future. Yes, yes, yes.
I'll read this one if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
Squirtle Squady, which is a great name. Squirtle Squady says, I regularly play Pathfinder. It's the only system I've ever played. Excited for this series to learn more about the role-playing games for my favorite Warhammer settings. Would love to see some one-shots featuring Lorebeards. Hey, you're in luck. We are going to do those things.
Yes, affirmatively. So we are definitely going to be playing one-shots. We are going to have other members of the Lorebeards cast on for these. We're going to try out some cool systems. And I think if we do any kind of like homebrew for them, we'll just put that on the Patreon. It makes sense, right?
Oh, that would be rad.
Yeah. So we'll be playing a lot of stuff. Sometimes with guests, we are going to possibly be playing with the developers of some systems. We'll have friends of the channel on. A lot of cool stuff is going to happen in the one-shot realm, which I'm quite excited for.
One of the few advantages to being an old game designer is that I have lots of friends in the industry. So yeah, we're looking at bringing on some people who have designed the game that we're going to play and have them with that table with us, hopefully, get that done. So where were we? Right. Vera.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about the Tyrant Star?
Ooh, the Tyrant Star. Why don't you start us off here? Because this is a big concept.
Okay, so in Dark Heresy, there is this thing called the Tyrant Star. It is a grimdark cosmic horror. And the basic idea is that there is this mysterious star. Some people call it a black dwarf because it's black. But it appears randomly across the Calixis sector. And wherever it shows up, planetary disasters, mass insanity, warp anomalies, all kinds of death are left in its wake. It's like a dark reflection of Sigmar's comet from Warhammer Fantasy. Whenever it shows up in the sky, people go, "Oh shit, something bad is about to happen."
Yeah, and there's one kind of person in the Imperium whose job it is to go where something bad is about to happen, and that is the humble or not so humble Inquisitor. So the presence of the Tyrant Star draws a lot of Inquisitors' attentions, and yeah, they're quite intrigued by this, and tensions emerge where there are a lot of Inquisitors because they all have very different ideas as to how to go about inquiring. As we have said, there are different factions and Ordos and a lot of internal conflict, and Calixis is fortunate enough to have a lot of inquisitorial presence as a result of this thing.
So the Tyrant Star, there's a really great piece of art for it. I kind of wish I'd have brought it out. But the Tyrant Star is it's a catalyst that the game master can use to basically say something bad is about to happen here because the Tyrant Star has appeared. Go investigate, find out what that is, and deal with it. The Owlcat role-playing game the Owlcat computer game, for Dark Heresy is going to feature the Tyrant Star. And one thing that's really fun about it from the Dark Heresy tabletop version is that it was always intentionally left undefined. Let me put it that way. It gave game masters a lot of creative freedom. There were a lot of different theories that we presented in the role-playing game books. It could have been like a demon manifestation or a Xenos weapon, a warp phenomenon, some sort of herald of prophecy, but we never confirmed anything as the thing. We did present like a timeline where we did define it. That was the Harlock's Legacy trilogy of adventures. Oh, we have a picture. Oh, there it is.
That's from the Abdomen game.
Okay, cool.
Look at that.
Look at that thing. That looks awesome. And actually, more recently, there's been a lot of fan theories about connecting it to the Dark King, which is something from the last Horus Heresy novels, and from the Siege of Terra series of novels. It's definitely going to feature as a big threat or problem in the Owlcat game. Did you ever play the Harlock's Legacy, Vera? Do you know what that one said about it?
We did not play Harlock's Legacy, no.
Okay. So the Harlock's Legacy trilogy, and I did see a comment about this earlier about whether it's related to Space Pirate Captain Harlock. Yeah, there's the thank you, Survivor. Erasmus Harlock and the Harlock family of the Harlock trilogy. Did y'all and the team get heavily inspired by Space Pirate Captain Harlock? Well, so this is John French and Alan Bly. These guys came up with the whole thing, and they are Yes, absolutely referencing Captain Harlock from anime. That is exactly where that comes from. And in the adventures for the Harlock's Legacy, it was essentially revealed that one explanation, at least the one from that timeline in those adventures, is that Erasmus Harlock, who was a rogue trader, I mean, a very mysterious rogue trader, had suffered a very great personal tragedy, and he was trying to, he had harnessed Xenos devices and chaos rituals that enabled him to travel back in time to try and undo this great tragedy. And the manifestations of the Tyrant Star were the moments where he would briefly reappear in real space along his journey back through time. Okay, I'm sorry. This is a deep cut. So I want to be clear. It's a very deep cut, but it's related to a comic book incident from the 80s. I'm not sure if anybody here is familiar with the Crisis on Infinite Earths from, I want to say 82. Anyway, there was this big comic book event that essentially ended one version of the DC Comics universe. And in that comic book series, The Flash, Barry Allen, was chasing down a tachyon that was powering an antimatter cannon. I'm sorry. I know this is a deep cut. It's very complex. I apologize. Anyway, so Barry Allen's trying to chase down this tachyon that's powering an antimatter cannon. And as he does so, he's traveling back through time, appearing in front of many of the superheroes along the way, briefly trying to warn them about the event that he is in fact part of much later on in the timeline. And it ends up destroying Barry Allen, but in a really cool way, because he becomes the lightning bolt that transforms him into the Flash, and therefore lives the rest of his life in a time loop of his best years. Anyway, getting back to the Tyrant Star, the Erasmus Harlock trying to avert the tragedy of his past is a homage to that moment, but it's done in a grimdark fashion where he's his motives may be good, but his actions are not, and definitely the effects of his reappearances along the way are much worse. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate your patience with me, everyone. I know that was kind of a weird tangent.
This is a layered deep cut. This is awesome.
Anyway, so that's basically the Tyrant Star. I mean, I don't know what else you want to say. It's also called Comus, the Night Traveler. Maybe it's possible it's the Seven Devils of Calixis. There's a lot of different names for it.
It is profoundly cool. It's another example of the nobility in the Calixis sector using cool archaeo and xenotech to accomplish all sorts of hubristic feats. I think that was Dark Heresy the originator of the Halo device as well, or was that
Yes.
Rogue Trader?
No, that they came out of Dark Heresy. In fact, I believe they were in Disciples of the Dark Gods. Is where they.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
So Halo devices. Well, please, Vera, tell everyone what a Halo device is.
A Halo device is a solution to all of your problems. All you got to do is stick it on, and you too can be immortal. Except gradually they sort of devolve their wearer into a flesh-eating monstrosity that has no mind. But this is of little concern to a imperial nobleman who has run out of time with the Juvenat. So these are devices that maybe they'll work out for you, but often don't. And they are coveted items because they succeed at prolonging life where rejuvenation treatments do not. But because they are Xenos tech, they are heretical technology, they are archaeo tech, they're all sorts of whatever they are bad news.
Yeah, so Juvenat technology is
yes,
it's kind of a Countess Bathory style, because you're distilling people into a substance that keeps you alive longer and restores. It basically keeps you young, which is weird. Anyway, so it's very common for important people in 40K to have a Juvenat treatment. Commissar Kane had it. I believe Eisenhorn had it. This is another one of those things that I think Abnett came up with, is the Juvenat treatments.
Fantastic stuff too, because like if corpse starch is okay, so is this, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's no worse. It's no worse.
There's a T-Ball 31 says, then Ross talked about Alan Moore for 10 hours. I probably could. Oh God, I probably could.
When's Alan Moore Day? Lorebeards and Roleplaying.
Nestor Vitumber says there is a Halo device in the Rogue Trader video game, which is really cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
The Halo devices are they're basically Cronenbergian body horror, because you plug it in and it keeps you, it essentially makes you immortal, but it also slowly transforms you into whatever the race was that had the devices in the first place. It kind of reminds me of some of the Doctor Who artifacts from different areas of Doctor Who that did similar things. Like it gave you power, but it started to transform you into a member of that race. That alien species.
That is sort of a running theme in Doctor Who, is that people are transformed into some other kind of creature. Like one of the recent series had one of the companions being made into a Cyberman, I think. So like things like
that.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they did have that happen. So, what else can we say about Dark Heresy? Because we have plenty of time left.
Oh man.
Do we want to talk about memes? Because we did say we were going to talk about memes.
I would love to hear about memes, Ross, because I think that Harlock is referential. This is a good meme. We like this. We talked a little about some famous actual play stories and Grendel.
Oh, Grendel. Yeah. Well, Grendel's not the only one. There's the All Guardsman Party. People are very familiar with that.
Yes.
So the memes and culture around this thing were considerable. There was a lot of people playing it online, a lot of people getting really into the idea. And this was, of course, 2008. So it was early, not quite early internet, I guess, but, mid internet. I don't know I guess nowadays would be early internet. It's weird. I'm old. Anyway, at that point, people were doing a lot of memes for the things that they liked, and they would throw them up online. This was a big thing. So grim darkness is grim was a thing that was said often about Dark Heresy. Or
this is true.
That guy over there looks strange. He's probably a heretic. Use cover, use grenades, kill it with fire.
Also true.
That meme actually references the difficulty of the game, because again, your ballistic skill might be 35 if you were lucky. And so hitting things with grenades was easier because they were area effect. Hitting things with flamers was very easy because it was them rolling to get out of the way rather than you trying to hit them. So that's a fun meme that actually references the mechanics. Everything
kill it with fire to Dark Heresy. Behold.
Oh no. I don't think so. But it's
I think we do.
Maybe. Oh, we have a comment here. Late second stage internet, pre-platform internet. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
I like pre-platform.
There were rules of how to not die like an idiot in the 41st millennium. Always check the body, never turn your back on an opponent, kill the Psyker first. When in doubt, cheat.
Big fan of cheating. There is no cheating when it comes to fighting the enemies of the Imperium, right?
Oh, we've got a super chat here. Would you like to read this one?
Please, yeah. Thank you so much, Ricardo Andre. Why isn't there necromancy in 40K if it is just puppeteering the body with magic? It'd be a way to give more importance to funeral rites and that sort. Well, we sort of have necromancy of a couple of different types. Like there's the one variety that the Necrons have where science is if it's sufficiently advanced, is indistinguishable from magic, wherein they've sort of distilled their soul essences into new avatars. And there's also the variety the Rubric Marines have, which is not great.
So Ricardo is he's well known for asking interesting questions, especially questions that he knows that I will have a strong opinion on. So I love this. I think this is aimed at me, and I like it. I have previously said that there is no such thing as necromancy in 40K. So when I said that, what I was thinking of was like the Warhammer Fantasy style, like I am raising the dead to fight for me, zombies and skeletons and ghosts. But if you look at it from a wider perspective, necromancy does exist, especially when you're talking about, like, say, the Wraith Guard of the Eldar, where they take dead souls and put them into robots to drive them. That's a form of necromancy. There are ways to, psychically influence dead bodies to become zombies. Poxwalkers are a good example of this. So I think Ricardo Andre, once again, you and I are going to we're going to have some very interesting conversations, and I love it. Necromancy, I would have to say it depends. It's very complicated. These are comments I say a lot about 40K. But yes, it sort of exists, but it also sort of doesn't.
I feel like Nurgle's influence is a little outside the bounds of like traditional necromancy, though, right? Because it's more like the rules of reality stop working, and they're being reanimated in a way that defies the rules that should be. It's like they are this pocket of unreal resistance to the cycle of life. It's this extension more than reanimation, almost. It's close aesthetically, that's for sure.
Oh, Ricardo has a follow-up. In fact, there are many types of Imperial necromancy. All the variants of the Keys of Hell, the Sarkosid wave devices, those are from the Radical's Handbook, if I'm not mistaken, etc. Yeah. I was just thinking about the Armatus Necrotechnica, which is a device from the Horus Heresy era that the Iron Hands used. One of the keys, it's related to the Keys of Hell, and all that.
Will people get mad if I point to the Golden Throne here? Is that allowed?
I mean, it is a life support device.
Is it?
Sort of. I mean, it's a lot of things. The Golden Throne is a lot of things. It's a plug for the Webway, among other things.
They're using a lot of Psyker souls to support that life. There's something going on there.
But his follow-up, thank you for the support, says, why he was talking about why not Nagash style necromancy. Vera, you're good at this metaphysical, but I'm gonna leave this one to you.
Yeah, this actually is an interesting subject because the way the warp manifests as psychana, or as in some cases sorcery in 40k, is quite different to the way that magic works in Warhammer Fantasy for a few reasons. One of which is that in fantasy, the aether, the winds of magic, are separated into distinct winds that have particular attributes, like Shaiish, which is the wind of death, which is related in its corrupt form to necromancy, the magical practice, the magical tradition. In 40k, you do have sorcerers and you do have magic, but they are using pretty much exclusively schools of magic that are obtained through studying under demons. Sorcery is something that is done using artifacts of demonic power, that is done through rites that are learned in this way, and it is not done intuitively in the same way that magic is sometimes by witches in fantasy. In 40k, psychery is done intuitively, but the effects that it has are not exclusively codified into the schools of psychana, which are an imperial conceit to kind of codify and structure very scary creatures, but they are a lot of the time a little less intricate. Psychery tends to accomplish a specific and oftentimes sort of subtle expression of pressure on the reality, right? Like there's a lot of effects that are invisible or hard to detect, but it's definitely a different metaphysical realm. Maybe this is a good chance to talk about how you thought about psychana while developing Dark Heresy.
Well, I was very aware that psychers tended to explode into demons. We got a lot of emails about people going, "Hey, I lost my entire party to a psyker turning into a demon." What we decided to do was to change the way that psychic activity worked in Rogue Trader. So we kind of use the idea that, hey, in Rogue Trader, you're an astropath, which is a different type of psyker than a typical psyker. And that allowed us to create a different system, which was more risk reward and less like, I'm just going to blow up. A good friend of mine named John Ivacek helped design the psychic system for Rogue Trader. And that was one we also used in Deathwatch. And I believe it was also used in Only War and possibly Black Crusade as well. I think the one we created for Rogue Trader then became the way going forward that psychics worked, which was far less random. Some things that we did create for Dark Heresy that I think had a lasting impact are the alien species that we came up with. Again, John French and Alan Blyer to blame for this one, but the Slough. These guys are awesome. If you're not familiar with the Slough, go check them out. They are called the Worm That Walks, consisting of hundreds of writhing, half-melded maggot-like worms covered in viscous necrotic mucus, and they basically hollow out humans and wear their bodies as meat suits to pretend to be humans. They were designed to be manageable threats for small groups of acolytes, but they were terrifying. They were psychic voids that fed upon the dead. They consumed the cranial matter of intelligent beings as a delicacy, and absorbing the memories of their victims. They had black disc-like ships, like basically flying saucers, and they had essentially death rays. Yes, that's a sloth right there, devouring a poor guardsman. And they had names like they were inspired by to some degree the guys from Dark City, because they had names like Mr. Book.
Oh, nice.
And Miss Scepter and things like that. Yeah, these guys were one of my favorite creations, and we got to expand them on a little bit. I would love to see them show up again. They are referenced often in the Horus Heresy black books that Alan Bly wrote, so they may still be a part of 40K somewhere, and I would love to see them show up again. There you go.
The idea that they're psychically dead is really interesting also, because one key distinction, I think, between the metaphysical system of Psychana and the Imperium versus the Aether and magic is that there are magic resistant things, but very few magic immune things. Whereas in 40K, we have blanks. We have alien species that are cut off from the warp entirely. We have the Necrons. We have the Tyranids, who are quite bad news if you are any sort of Psyker. It's an interesting distinction where it's this phenomena that like everything is kind of linked to in a more abstract soul-based way. And things like this that exist outside the warp are like terrifying as a result, because it feels wrong primally, in addition to being disgusting and violent and scary.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why South were scary is that your most powerful tool in Dark Heresy, which was a Psyker, wasn't able to defect them nearly as much. Morning to Crescent says the warp and magic in 40K are a lot weaker, it feels, in fantasy. A lack of open warp gates, perhaps. That's not necessarily true. Alpha class Psykers, which are the most powerful Psykers, they can accomplish ridiculous tasks. They can transform entire worlds. There are Psykers who are immensely powerful. I mean, just the Emperor, of course, being the strongest one we know of, could generate a beacon that can be seen anywhere in the Milky Way galaxy. That's astounding, first of all. But yeah, it's interesting how the differences are between the Winds of Magic and the Warp. I was actually been on a Lorebeards episode for fantasy talking about the differences between them and how that functions. So.
Yeah, one of the most powerful Psychana in Dark Heresy is the Molten Beam, which just creates a big bulkhead-piercing laser, and it's no penumbral pendulum. It's pretty good, but it's not that.
Oh, the penumbral pendulum. I use that all the time in Total War. It's a great spell. Oh, we've got a super chat here. Would you like to read this one?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ricardo Andre, who notes, without the gates filtering, in 40K you have raw warp. In fantasy, detailed in the total winds combination, high and dark magic, so it's more dangerous, but feasible to do it. I think part of the challenge in 40K is, again, that you need to have like real sorceress knowledge to manifest the full strength of the warp. And this is even true for the Emperor. Oh, Heresy. He had to learn some stuff to bring forth even his full potential as someone who is like the most powerful Psyker in all of history. In fantasy, to return to the necromancy concept, we have like distinguished schools of magic and lineages of education in magical study, which for various reasons really doesn't exist outside of maybe some Chaos Space Marine warbands in 40K.
Correct. It's just, it gets weird. Because the warp is a realm of metaphor. It is a alternate dimension where thoughts and dreams and nightmares can become real. So there are entire species like the Tau that are very removed from the warp. Like they don't really have a reflection in the warp. They're not really psychically active. And the more psychically active you are, the more the warp will react to you. One of the biggest problems with the Imperium in 40K is that more and more people over time are becoming psychic, and the warp is reacting to that. So more and more demons and stuff are showing up over time. So Micah says it would be cool to have a Psyker school. Well, there is one. It's the Scholastica Psychana. Vera, do you want to mention that?
Yeah, the Scholastica Psychona has a really cool school bus called the Black Ship, and you get to go for free. And this is why you pay the Imperial tithe, is to go to the Scholastica Psychona. It's a great adventure. You'll never forget it. It's not optional. You have to go. And if you fail the entrance exam, or if you do too well, you are fed to the Emperor. So there is a very regimented approach to educating psychers and to detecting psychers. And there are schools of the Inquisition who are devoted to finding psychers and to ensuring they don't go around unsupervised, and to making sure they are broken and put to use appropriately. Much as there are battle wizards in fantasy, there are combat psychers in 40k, and for pretty much any variety of psyker other than specifically navigators are put through this grueling experience of being transported to the Golden Throne for their sanction, which is the process through which the Emperor sort of guards them a little bit against the warp and stares into their soul. And then they are put through a pretty intensive regimen of psycho indoctrination and education and control over their abilities, which are then condensed into some school or another in an effort to keep them from experimenting, which is dangerous on its own. They go through a lot, and they're given little knives to kill themselves with if they ever run out of ideas.
Ricardo Andre also says Eldari ain't winning because Slaanesh nerfing them. I mean, to a degree, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to use their powers, and they have to be very careful. One of the reasons why Farseers are the leaders of the craft world Eldar, the Asuryani, is because they focus their abilities through runes that give them a level of separation between themselves and the warp. Therefore, they don't necessarily draw the attention of Slaanesh. And we have one from Grim Isaac. You want to read this one?
Grim Isaac asks, can we get a Nagash invades 40k what if?
If he's playing by 40k's rules, he's pretty screwed. But if he's playing by Warhammer Fantasy rules, he's probably fine. He's going to do great. He might team up with well, I don't know. It would be a fun episode to do. I'd love to have.
I have questions about that. Yeah, like we need to answer some big metaphysical ideas there, because the warp and the aether are quite similar, right? And like their aesthetic and the daemons that come out of them, but they function quite differently, because the aether in fantasy is sort of the building blocks from which things were made by the old ones initially, whereas in 40k it's more like a reflection of everything it ever was or will be. It's interesting. Like the rule set would matter.
Oh, and I do want to mention something else about Dark Heresy. If you guys are at all fans of watching videos on YouTube about lore, about Warhammer, which I hope you are, because that's what we do. There are several of them that talk about like icebergs in 40k, or they talk about like the most horrific things in 40k, or sometimes they'll do like the strangest or most obscure things in 40k. And a lot of times stuff from Dark Heresy, particularly Disciples of the Dark Gods, tends to show up on those lists. It always never fails to give me a big grin when I'm watching one of those things and they mention stuff like the red room or the Tyrant Star, and I'm just like, oh yeah.
Oh, the red room is cool.
Yeah, it's red room, murder room. I forget what it's called, but
it's the coolest murder mystery in 40k. It's neat.
It's wild. Also, so we talked about the Slough. The Slough are big miners. Of the minor Xenos races, Slough are one of the more interesting ones. There's also the Uvoth. We could do a whole episode on either the Slough or the Uvoth. The Uvoth were the aliens that lived in the Calixis expanse before it became the Calixis sector. They were wiped out by a thing called the Angevin Crusade that swept through and wiped them out, but they left behind some of their guardians, their creations. They were a race that used a lot of golem-like, to use a term from D&D, like elementals and golems were things that they kind of left behind. Mm-hmm. Energy constructs that assembled pieces of stone together to form bodies were their robots or automatons, and some of that stuff was left behind. They're really cool. We developed them throughout Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, and Deathwatch, so they have for a minor Xenos race, they're pretty fleshed out, which is really cool.
Nice. I guess we should shed a little more light on this, huh? This may have been called the murder room. I think we both recall exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think it's the murder room. It's not the red room.
It's red in there. It becomes very red. It becomes a red room.
Yeah, exactly. Vera, what's some of your favorite bits of the Calixis sector? Like, you talk about Scintilla, I think is, or no, you talk about Malfi. Malfi is the world that you like the most.
I love Malfi. Malfi is a horrible place. Malfi is a den of corruption. It's a spire planet. It's got it's vying for authority over the system. So the nobility there is trying to play for authority as the capital of Calixis against Scintilla, who has the power that is. And it should not become this power because it is an incestuous mess of heresy and various forms of political scheming. I believe that there is a unique origin trait for a Malfian-born character wherein it's something related to their starting corruption because it's just such a bad place. They have they're predisposed genetically to wickedness. It is deep-seated corruption on the planet. Like anyone there is just aligned toward the plots of the dark gods.
Well, Malfi is a capital of the subsector of Malfi. So there's a Malfian subsector of Calixis. This is not just a world, but it is the capital of a number of worlds, a number of systems close by.
Yes, they have legitimate claim to vie against Scintilla.
It's the primary population and manufacturing center for the Rimward territories, and it has continent-spanning cities. The Hive Sibelius, I believe, is what it's called. They have overbuilt habitation ledges. 800. They got a massive population, and they wield considerable economic and political power because it was at one time it was in the contention to be the sector capital, but they did not. They chose Scintilla instead, and the Malfians never forgot this ever. So it's defined less by its industrial output, but more by the labyrinthine, and I love being able to use that word, labyrinthine web of aristocratic intrigue. The noble families of Malfi are constantly scheming. It's kind of like Cormorag, but Imperium.
If I recall, it's so bad that there is a Sisters of Battle outpost of the moon, Galaglass, that orbits it to keep watch over the place just in case.
Yeah, Lord Inquisitor Mar said of Malfi, he said, the only thing keeping Malfi from becoming a charnel house is nobody, not even the heretics, dare turn their backs on each other long enough to do the deed.
And this is one planet that's one part of the broader interstellar politics of the Calixis sector. So you can have a Malfian nobility that's perhaps funding an expedition. The Acolytes go somewhere. You need money. You need to buy a ship. You need to buy passage. Well, they'll hook you up. Uh-oh, now you owe them.
There's a hidden inquisitional facility there. There's an Agra moon called Galaglass. There's a palace district that's all with all the historical. It's a historical noble estate that's been burned out and is abandoned following the corruption of one of the major noble houses, House Orsini, if you remember them. The menagerie cult. They got screwed over by a Tzeentch cult. Yeah. So during the Angevin Crusade, this was initially Malfi was like they said this is going to be the place for the capital, and everybody thought that was true. So they built up Malfi. A lot of the nobles moved there. Everyone invested in it, and then later on they were like, no, it's actually Scintilla. As the sector got bigger, the superior position of Scintilla said that we're going to put our capital there instead, because that was where sector level governance could be feasible given all the warp routes. And warp routes are essentially like the most stable path to get from a system to another system, interstellar travel. Yeah, so Malfi is really, really cool. Actually, one of my favorite guys is called Elizabeth Belasco. Belasco, what a great name. Love it.
Of the Belasco house, makers of the famed Belasco dueling pistol.
As a matter of fact, yes. Yes. And she killed a guy called there's this thing. This daughter of another noble house named Hayate. She was malign, treacherous, and cruel. Okay, and she, on her 17th birthday, she went into space on a voyage, like a Sweet 16 party, and then she came back, but she was very, very different. She was still beautiful, still regal, but she was burning with madness and a conviction that everything deserved destruction. And because of her, a bunch of stuff got screwed up. She accumulated a bunch of power. She established a shadowy court of brutes, sadists, and killers, and overthrew her father. And then Elizabeth Belasco comes along and is like, no, this is not okay. And Elizabeth is the one, dueling pistol in hand, puts a lasbolt through the head of this lady. Hayate, when she returned, she changed her name to Hate with a Y, kind of like Madison with a Y. It's like it was a weird way for her to like establish herself as a different person. I don't know. Teenage girls are weird. I don't know. Like Vera, you were a teenage girl. You can tell me.
I'm going to spell my name with a Y from now on. The Y is silent though.
There was all kinds of stuff. There was an inquisitional war on Melfi. Anyway, it's just one planet. The point is trying to get across here is that the Calixis sector has like dozens of worlds that are fleshed out. Maybe not to the same level as Melfi. Melfi's pretty one of the most fleshed out worlds, but it's really cool.
Yeah, and like the setting let you flesh out a lot of different corners too. Like we were talking about schools of Psyker earlier. There's like more than just the Scholastica canon. Like there's the Templar Calix, which is on Scintilla, so that's related. But that's another schooling tradition for Psykers, for combat Psyker in particular, which is really cool because these are like the CQC Psykers. This is the Psycho Mantis of the 40k setting. These are the guys who are quite useful to the Inquisitors. Actually, they're thought to use weaponry as part of their psychic tradition. So it's pretty neat. Use force weapons and all sorts of combat arts.
Oh yeah, don't they have a career for them?
Yeah, they have a whole career. It's really cool.
Yeah, the Dark Heresy game had careers. These were your classes. And the Inquisitor's Handbook added some new ones, and then the supplements added even more new ones. We did one. So the Inquisitor's Handbook was the first one to say you can here's how to play Sister of Battle, but the presentation I thought wasn't that great because when you played a Sister of Battle using that career, you didn't get a bolter, you didn't get power armor, you just basically got a book and like a torch. And I was like, that doesn't seem like a Sister of Battle to me. So we redid the whole thing in a book called Blood of Martyrs, which was the ecclesiarchy book for the Calixis sector. And the Sister of Battle career out of that book, you started with, guess what? A bolter and power armor. Because ta-da! Oh, we have a question really quick I don't want to address. Is it too late to apply for the Heresy book contest? I don't think so. Sotec is keeping track, I believe.
We're going to draw in about 15 minutes, I think. But so it's not too late if you're interested in winning an amazing signed copy of Dark Heresy by the one and only Ross Watson.
We've got a banner across the bottom that tells you how to enter. But there is a Dark Heresy book you can win. And I think we're going to wrap that up. Sotec, you can tell me, or Hawk, if you're around, can tell me when we're closing that, but I think it's soon.
About 15 minutes, I think.
Yeah, about 15 minutes. Sounds right. Sounds right.
How about you, Ross? Any favorite corners of Calixis? Any cool zones?
Okay, so there is a planet called Woe, W-O-E. And Woe is a living world. It is a death world of swamps and moors and mist-shrouded fens, and it is technically everything is. It's like one of those tree systems where all the roots are interconnected. Like everything on the planet is interconnected, so it is a living thing. And you go there, you tend to die because the plants will grab you and suck you under the mud and like devour you whole. And there's a lot of like skeletons and helmets and skulls and things like that are sort of floating on the surface. People believe that maybe the planet itself is trying to warn anyone from landing on it. So our Subject just asked me if we're ready to stop the if we're ready to unleash the giveaway. So I think.
Ooh, are we?
Let's say I think we are. Yeah. If you guys got any more people who want to enter !Heresy all lowercase.
2-minute warning. 2-minute warning.
All right.
Here's a question that I like, because this is related to Dark Heresy as a whole, I think. Mornington asks, how do you reconcile the issue of scale in 40k and Dark Heresy? With 1 trillion people in a hive world, doing anything significant seems near impossible if you take the sheer size and population to account. If you're not doing significant things, how do you engage the players?
Well, everything in 40K is a Rube Goldberg machine. It's the basic answer. If you stop a minor cult from establishing a circus on Scintilla where they show freaks that were mutated by chaos, that may not seem like much, but doing it when you did it, stopping that cult, means that they weren't able to grow. They weren't able to, unleash a demon at the right time to kill the governor when he's visiting this particular part of the planet. You see, it's a Rube Goldberg machine. You are getting there at the exact time to stop the thing that starts the next thing.
Yeah, I would say that it's important for the thematics of 40K that it feels like you're carrying a candle through an infinite darkness, but it's important that you can tell that you're still lighting the way. You should be able to understand that your actions do matter in some way. There should be like personal stakes in the tension of fighting against corruption, but also occasional wins, because it's not entirely hopeless. You can occasionally stifle the ambitions of chaos. It can happen.
Yeah. The setting is Warhammer 40K in general is like 5 minutes to midnight, and everything you do to hold back that clock from ticking 1 second forward is meaningful, even if it seems like it's a minor or local incident. These things are connected. I understand the concern here. I understand the difficulty of sometimes grappling with, like, how is this meaningful? Sometimes it's going to come down to the game master
Yes.
and the players, because if they're not bought in, if they don't give a crap about the Calixis sector, it's going to be hard to get them to care about minor issues. But if they do care, a lot of this just falls down on whether or not you're able to engage the players with the setting meaningfully.
I would argue, this is my bias as someone who's played a good bit of Dark Heresy. I think the most fun way to engage with it is to play as someone who really, really cares both about the outcome of what they're doing and whether or not they're a heretic. If your character is really bought into the moral struggle of heresy and battling heresy and combating the threats that the Imperium faces, you will have a rich experience, I think, because every little bit counts. And even in a world where it's very hard, a universe where it's very hard to have agency, the Acolytes do just a little bit. And that little bit can be all that matters.
Okay, Sotek is telling me it's time. So we are now declare a winner. Who's the winner, Sotek?
Bum.
We've got it. Also, we have a super chat to read in the meantime.
Yes, we have a super chat.
Hannah1439, thank you very much. Missed the beginning, so maybe you've covered this already. Do you have a favorite use of the Tyrant Star?
I am quite excited to see how it'll feature into the upcoming video game.
I agreed. Well, as a developer, I like the Captain Harlock traveling back through time to try and stop his great tragedy from occurring. But I also like the idea that it's a herald of, it's in a way a herald of chaos corruption, and that its presence is just a reminder that chaos is always there, lurking in the background.
We were talking about Be'lakor in 40K the other day.
Be'lakor being linked to the Tyrant Star would actually make him way more cool.
I'm just saying. This is a throwback to our Snow Day AMA and the somewhat funny layout.
It looks like the winner is Hawk Oddly, who is our chief mod. Hey, congrats, Hawk.
Congratulations.
That's cool. We'll get you the book. I will ship it to you. Just send me. You know how to reach me, Hawk. Send me your information, and I'll get the book out to you.
Big dubs. Congratulations.
Other things I would like. Oh, sorry. We're flying. Would you like to talk about any other worlds in the Calixis sector, like Fink's world, maybe, or?
That was what I was burning to talk about a little bit, because I'm quite biased towards it. I've done a lot of running in Ascalon also. I'm more familiar with some of the zones there. But do you have any Calixis worlds that you were motivated to discuss other than Woe, which sounds like a nice place? No, it's called Woe.
Fink's world. Fink's world is the gangster's paradise. I love it. It's basically where you go to do scum stuff. It's underworld focused. It's crime focused smuggler stuff. This is the Han Solo planet, basically. The planet, it's got a place called Volg Hive. Volg is one of the most notorious places in the entire sector, and it's got an extensive criminal infrastructure. It's perfect for campaigns involving gangs or criminal organizations, underworld politics, and it's got this street level aspect of Dark Heresy that I really like. But it also has, it's got brothels and blood sport arenas and just all kinds of like fun little spots to go visit. There's a monster we created for the first supplement I ever made for Dark Heresy was Creatures Anathema, which was a bestiary. And one of the monsters I created was this thing called the Finks World Pit Thing. The Pit Thing is a weird mutant, like Rancor almost, that they use in the fighting pits of Finks World, where they will take entire gangs that are caught and captured, or entire gangs that have no other choice, that this is the best way to earn money, and they throw them in there to fight the pit things. So that's the world I kind of like. Quadus, the tax haven of the sector.
This is like again an example of the strength of a setting like 40K though, because you can place an adventure with such a variance of themes. Like you can have a very political, intrigue-based campaign set in somewhere like Malthus and somewhere like Scintilla. You can go to our more scum and villainy themed areas to do a gritty campaign, hanging out with gangers and hive scum. You can go and brave the wilds looking for xenotech. Like there's so much potential.
Quadus, which was brought up, I should probably tell you what that is. It's a pleasure world. So what's a pleasure world? Pleasure worlds are places where the wealthy and decadent go to get hedonistic entertainments for those who can afford them. It is a Las Vegas in space. Okay. And on Quadus, the Tyrant Star actually rises here. This is one of the adventures of the Harlex Legacy trilogy. The Tyrant Star appears in the sky over Quadus. And one of the things they have there, okay, so if you go to Vegas, you could probably find, if you wanted to, you could probably find a dogfight or a cockfight. Illegal, but common in the underworld. Well, rich people like that shit. And they like to be able to do that on Quadus. So there's this whole area in Quadus called the Red Cages. It's a super dungeon of gladiatorial arenas and beast pens. Now, I know we just got done talking about Finks World where they have arenas, but those are for like those are for normal people. Those are for like you can afford a ticket to go see a Finks World pit thing fight. You will not be able to afford a ticket for the Red Cages. And there's scav cannibals down there, ogre and beast keepers, menagerie of anything you could think of, probably from Necromunda might even be there, down in that area, like ambles. Anyway, it gets weird. But when the Tyrant Star shows up, it really escalates the horror elements because it heralds the entire doom of the planet. Decadent pleasure world atmosphere plus gladiatorial combat plus encroaching darkness. That's Quadus. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it.
It's a winning combination, I would say. How much did Dark Heresy do to define the different kinds of worlds in 40K, the categorizations of different kinds of planets?
To my knowledge, we used as many examples as we could. I know there's shrine worlds. I know there's pleasure worlds. There's death worlds. I feel like we put one of every kind in there. There's even a Space Marine chapter homeworld there, which is Sacris. Sacris is the homeworld of the chapter I created, the Storm Wardens, and they are in the Calixis sector. So, yeah, I think we used all of them. There's hive worlds, there's agra world, or at least moons, agra moons. So
surely, yeah.
Oh no, what is that one place? Iocanthos is an agra world where they have a ongoing rebellion there. It's a feudal agra world. So there's like castles and baronies and the Brotherhood of the Jaw, which is a kingdom that exemplifies. They are basically the Gorka Morka guy. They think orcs are awesome. So the Brotherhood of the Jaw, they wear these big iron gobs. It's wild.
There is a Russian film that I think of whenever I think about feudal worlds in 40K called Hard to be a God, which is about a spacefaring civilization that has effectively gone out to find a feudal world. It is a really interesting black and white film from 2013 where this very adept traveling do-gooder effectively touches down in this miserable feudal world and tries to find out what's going on there. It's pretty grotesque. It's very interesting. It's based on a quite cool book, but I would recommend this. I think it's like key to this idea where you're trying to perhaps as an acolyte not let on that you are from some greater place. Maybe your subtlety is an important thing. Oh, we haven't talked about the subtlety mechanic yet, have we either?
Well, no. Let's talk about that. So, what is the subtlety, and why is it important for Inquisitors?
Well, subtlety is the distinction between knocking over the planetary governor's house and quietly engineering a campaign to have him removed over perhaps a year. It is a matter of how exposed your activities as an Inquisitor are on the planet. It is a matter of how aware your enemies and even your friends are of your presence. I think it's thematically important as there are a lot of kinds of Inquisitor, right?
Well, yeah. Basically, some Inquisitors show up and they land their ship and a big red carpet rolls out. Trumpets announce, I am Lord Inquisitor so-and-so. And he walks out wearing a suit of power armor with a giant inquisitional symbol on his chest. He's like, I'm here to deal with the chaos cults.
This is known as not subtlety. This is low subtlety. This is unsubtle.
Yes. There's advantages to both approaches. The unsubtle guy can go right to the Imperial governor and say, I need you to do this for me, and you will do this, and you will do that. And he will probably get that. The subtle Inquisitor, though, shows up either pretending to be a rogue trader or pretending to be a member of a noble house. Someone with some influence and power, but not someone everyone's going to go, oh, look, that's the Inquisitor. And subtle guys, they usually find it a lot easier to find chaos cults when they're not already hiding from the bombastic Inquisitor. Although sometimes they will work together and do a two-pronged approach. So, but yeah, subtlety means that if you're being subtle, that means that your enemies are generally not aware of what you're up to. And that's good because it means you have the advantage of surprise, the fact that they're not actively hunting you, trying to kill you. Those are things that are very valuable to a subtle approach. But the unsubtle approach gives you more resources. So,
yeah, and because the actions of the acolytes on the ground are really what determines how subtle you are on the planet, your agency as acolytes can have a lot to do with the reputation of the Inquisitor you work for. Whether people know they exist, for example, whether they think they're foolish or brazen. So even if your agency as a character is limited, you're sort of at the beck and call of this mysterious figure, you wind up being pretty important to them as long as you're still an active pawn on the board.
Exactly. I think, we're in our last half hour here, so I would say it's getting time to wrap things up a little bit. I would say, for me, Dark Heresy's lasting influence is felt very strongly because it was the first Warhammer 40K role-playing game, and now we have many. We have Wrath of Glory, which I designed. We have Imperium Maledictum. We have all of the spin-offs from Dark Heresy, including a second edition. It was the pioneer that paved the way for a lot of role-playing. In fact, maybe you guys don't know this, but Dark Heresy and the Warhammer 40K role-playing games in general were in the top 3 role-playing games played between 2008 and 2011. It was D&D, then Pathfinder, and sometimes those two would switch. And then the next one down was Dark Heresy or Rogue Trader, which was big. So there's a lot of people out there. If you talk to them about Dark Heresy, there's a good chance that a typical role-play game enthusiast has probably heard of it or tried it.
Yeah, it's one of the most important RPGs just in general. Certainly to the Warhammer franchise, but also to enhancing the field of role-playing games, I think. All of these mechanics that are directly tied to the expression of the tone of the setting, to what your role is, whether all of this ties into making a good game, expressing through mechanics what the idea is, of the setting, of the conflict, of the character.
I think you're talking about tonal fidelity and IP fidelity also, because it's a licensed game.
Something we're going to be talking about a lot on these streams.
Yeah, there were a lot of mechanical innovations. The percentile system was borrowed from WIFRP, but it did advance in different ways from WIFRP. And again, it's important to point out that whatever Dark Heresy built was adapted from Call of Cthulhu and then adopted back into Call of Cthulhu by Mike Mason. And then, of course, there's a lot of D100 Osric systems as well out there, if I'm not mistaken. There's basically, if you are looking at a D100 system that was created post 2008, there's a really good chance that it may have looked at or be based on some of the things that were done in Dark Heresy. Now, we haven't talked about the second edition very much. Probably should say some things about that. What you played mostly second edition, right?
Yes, and we pulled a lot from Calixis because it's awesome. But we did use second edition primarily, which is a couple of different conceits. The way you build characters is different. No longer does 2E use the tiered ladder system for careers. You have proficiencies in certain stats that affect how much things cost, but you can buy from anywhere you want. In practice, you probably only want to buy things you have like 2 proficiencies in, because XP is hard to come by and abilities are expensive, but also very powerful. The talents are a little higher impact in some cases. The way you acquire like a prestige class is gated by a total of characteristic and so on. We talked about influence a little bit, which is quite funny with subtlety, because when you are a very low subtlety creature, of course you can use the full influence of the Inquisitor. When you are high subtlety and no one knows who you are, it makes a little less sense that you can flex your rosette to buy soup. That is a real story from my game, by the way.
Oh shit, I want to hear this story.
This has been a meme at our table for ages. It was the end of us using influence also. So we had rotating GMs, and during one of the arcs, we had a need to like buy food for ourselves and one of our guests. We were trying to like get food of some kind. We had like a sort of pseudo captive. We had our arm around him, right? Someone we were very, very politely escorting around who couldn't leave, and we wanted to get food as part of our little extended interrogation sequence, a little bit of good cop, and we had to roll influence to get soup. And for the life of us, nobody could hit this plus 20 influence test. God. So the narrative impact of this is like, all right, no matter what we do, no one will give us a can of soup on this entire hive city. So we kind of like threw our hands up.
No soup for you.
No soup for you. Exactly.
That is great. I dig
the real lesson is you should hand wave rules like that sometimes if it's not that important, but it was very silly in practice and is kind of appropriate to the way the system is written as, raw. So
rules as written is what that acronym stands for.
Yeah, system written as raw is like an ATM machine, but yes.
Would you like to hear some stories about the development of second edition?
I would love to.
So originally, second edition was attempting a comprehensive overhaul. Originally, they were trying to do something very different. They had action point based combat. So really? Yeah, like you would spend one action to move. In a lot of ways, it actually reflects some of the things that Pathfinder second edition did, for example, with the action economy. They had different skill groupings and things like that, but the beta testers went into full revolt because it would not be it would be incompatible. It would not have backward compatibility with the previous games. And they were like, this is bullshit. It has to be compatible. Remember, we talked about this early about like the games the design team, including myself, were kind of like, that's not as important. Well, guess what? People really, really, really wanted it. And we found out when they started designing Dark Heresy second edition, and the beta testers were like, no way, Jose. So they had to go back to the drawing board, come up with sort of a hybrid of the new things plus the old things to retain the percentile rolls, but incorporate aptitude-based XP costs. That's what you talked about.
Yes, the aptitudes, things you're proficient at.
That was from Only War. I think they brought that in. And the and then they updated the Psyker power disciplines. But the reason also about the reason why it's set in a different area, Games Workshop at the time, remember this is a different command structure. This is the Kirby era, not the Roundtree era that we're in right now for Games Workshop. But in the previous era of Games Workshop, they did not like the fact that the Calixis sector had so many Inquisitors. There were a lot of Inquisitors in the Calixis sector, maybe too many. The core book introduced, I think, 10, and then I think in the supplements we introduced about 4 or 5 more. So there was over a dozen Inquisitors running around, and Games Workshop was like, that is too many for an individual sector. So they wanted a reboot. They wanted the Ascalian sector. But as you've pointed out, the majority of players for 2nd edition Dark Heresy prefer the Calixis sector, and they use that setting far more often.
Yep. But they're compatible, so it works.
Well, I mean, it's just a setting. It's easy. You could just overlay that onto any rule set, really. But I thought you'd find that interesting because that is something that they wanted to be different. And I think they had the opportunity to be different. If they'd stuck to their guns, they could have, done a full change. There was a lot of resistance when I was working on Rogue Trader to the idea that we would up the power level and everybody would be, more competent and have this profit factor instead of money. And it's a well-known fact that nerds hate change, frankly. And this was an issue that we had to deal with when we were, making the second game as opposed to the first. But yeah, anyway, that's what I would say about that.
Well, Calixis is just so well fleshed out, right? There's so much going on. Maybe if there had been more than 3 supplements for 2nd edition, it would have gotten to a point where there's enough there people would want to really stick to it. But there's so much world over in Calixis. It's all interconnected in ways that are interesting. You're adjoining all sorts of other interesting spaces in the setting. So
if you are interested in Dark Heresy and you want to learn more, or if you have played it in the past and you want a little bit of nostalgia, go check out TV Tropes. They have a surprisingly robust section on the Warhammer 40k role-playing game lines, and I think the biggest one is the one on Dark Heresy because they cover a lot of aspects of the Calixis sector and other things.
One of my favorite websites.
TV Tropes, yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
They're great. So yeah, go check them out.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Tell me about Sanctic Demonology.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Hello.
Oh. Do I have to? I really don't.
It has ramifications, Ross. I'm quite curious.
You tell me about it. You tell me about it.
Sanctic Demonology is a very specific school of psychona that is present in 2E. We've run the expansions, and it is a whole discipline of psychery that draws the divine light of the Emperor to accomplish all sorts of things. And it has a few conceptual ramifications about the Emperor's interest in what the Psykers are doing and or their ability to draw power directly from him, which is quite interesting. So I was curious as to what the thought process was behind that.
Okay, so I to be clear, was not involved in 2nd edition Dark Heresy. So that is not me. Whoever did that is not me. But yeah, I've never liked the idea that Psykers could just directly draw on the Emperor's power. That's wild. I think this was back in 5th edition, I think, with the Matt Ward edition. And it was related to how the descriptions of the Grey Knights use their abilities, their psychics. So it's kind of an anti-demon psychic discipline.
Yes, it is really good at that.
Yeah, and you can sort of justify the Grey Knights having some sort of weird connection to the Emperor because they do have a weird connection to the Emperor. They have this Terminus Decree. They were founded at the end of the Horus Heresy after the Emperor had been put right after the Emperor had been put in the Golden Throne. There's a lot of connections that can be drawn there. Random guy in the Ascalian sector who is a psyker, just like, you know what? I'm going to blow up demons with my mind because I love the Emperor. I never liked that. I gotta admit, it was just wild because they channel energy through the Golden Throne and they have a connection to the God Emperor of mankind. I mean, astropaths have a connection to the god emperor of the mankind because they have the soul binding ritual,
Right.
but that's not the same thing. And it just, I'm sorry. It is one of those pieces of lore I'm not a fan of. Hey, people have asked me this before, what my least favorite bit of lore for 40k is. Maybe it's psychic demonology.
Wow, that's a strong stance. I think it plays into the idea that the Emperor is sort of emerging as a Gestalt chaos power pretty well. Like the idea that he's becoming this entity separate from himself because of all the faith put in him. I think that it aligns to that not too badly.
Well, okay, so we need to bring you on for Lorebeards 40k to talk about faith in 40k because it is a very metaphysical thing, and you
would love to. Let me know when.
You have some brilliant insights into it. I love the way your mind works when you talk about this.
Aww.
Faith is clearly not psychic. Like it functions separately from psychic ability, because we have seen this in the lore where blanks and nulls that affect things that are of psychic origin or warp origin doesn't affect faith.
Yeah, and there's codified true faith talents too in the RPGs that are separate from psychic power. But they still do stuff. They do it. They have a real impact, right?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, lore has evolved over time. Like what faith is now is not what faith was then, etc. But so okay, I think you can't, if you start from the basis of the Emperor is anathema to chaos, which he is.
Sure.
If you start there, and then you extrapolate out and say, okay, the Emperor can soul bind with Psykers, which he can. That's where the astropaths come from.
Mm-hmm.
There is a chain of logic you can follow that will take you to, therefore, Psykers can channel the Emperor's energies. Look at that face. Oh my God. You can follow that chain of logic. I don't like it because it goes against it. It seems to undercut the specialness of faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
The miracles that faith can create in 40k. They feel more interesting and meaningful if they're not just a psyker who unknowingly is using Emperor energy. So that's what I think. But
yeah. I think you're right that it feels better if it's a separate concept, but we have to like look at living saints and things, and this could be its whole own conversation. I think you're right. I would enjoy that.
So I mean, there should, in my opinion, there should be a distinction between sanctic or holy events and warp derived disciplines in 40k. Now, obviously, the Grey Knights, like they occupy kind of a special space, and I kind of hand wave it. I'm like, it's fine. It's Grey Knights. It's whatever. They're incorruptible. They can't be corrupted by chaos. They do, you know, in 5th edition they did some really wild shit, like when the Grandmaster carved his name onto Khorne's heart, or the heart of a not Khorne's heart, but the heart of a greater demon. Just wild shit. And sometimes I love that really crazy, silly stuff, but when it comes to faith, it feels like it needs to be mysterious and special and meaningful rather than just psychic stuff, which and a whole bunch of stuff in 40k just comes down to a wizard did it. A whole bunch of stuff, like a lot. And I'm willing to suspend my disbelief to a certain point. But after that, I'm like, okay, Tzeentch has manipulated everyone ever? Really? I don't think so. Like there's things that 40k does really well with its vision of the IP. The Games Workshop in general is very good at having a unified vision for what their setting needs to be.
Sure.
Compare and contrast that with Star Wars, for example, right?
Oh boy.
Which I love Star Wars, but Star Wars has gone through many creative hands, and for a long time, George Lucas just kind of ignored it. And so it's been defined by a legion of people who all had very different visions of what the Force was, right? I mean, is it little tiny antibodies in your in your blood, or is it some kind of spiritual connection with the universe? It runs the gamut. So I approve of Games Workshop's having this singular vision and being very careful about how they implement and interpret their own setting. And that's why I think it's important that faith be special. So I don't know. I'm on a long tangent here, and I do apologize, but sanctic demonology just goes, Oh boy. Russ, like, here it is.
No. I was curious as to your thoughts on this because it's a whole can of worms, right? It takes on a lot of significance, frankly, the idea that you can do this.
Oh boy. Okay, Ricardo Andre, my debate partner, thinks the opposite. Naturally. Faith for me, Ricardo says, is stronger because it's still tied to the warp. If it is random BS, it loses magic. A Psyker draws it alone. Faith makes the unreal real due to strong belief. I mean, kinda, but I don't know. I don't think so, buddy. I'm sorry. Ricardo and I have this conversation like once an episode where he'll say something and I'm like, sort of, but not really, and I don't like that. You know?
I get the distinction between like drawing power out of the warp and channeling it versus imagining so hard it appears in the warp, though. Like it's.
Oh, is that what Ricardo's saying?
I think what Ricardo's getting at is that a Psyker is drawing power from the warp, and that a faith is like enough belief you are generating a new thing on the other side of the veil. And I think that's sort of what's happening with the faith in the Emperor. Yeah, because he's there sure is something happening, right? Like the belief is a warp reactive thing in some way, probably. Like there's,
I mean, that seems logical, right? Like that we have the Tau Va, the god of the Tau that was created through belief. So okay. And this is also a common thing with Ricardo. He'll say something and I'll be like, no. And then like 5 minutes later, well, sort of. And then maybe 5 minutes later, I guess kinda. And we're at that phase now where I'm like, I guess kinda it is that way, but I don't. There's something inside me that rebels against it being psychic. But
there's so much nuance though. Like what counts as psychic though? Because like sorcery is not psychic, right? Like these are all things that are warp reactive, but they have different principles, right?
Ricardo says, praise you, Vera, for being.
Wow, thank you.
Here we go. Faith as manifesting an idea from the warp. Okay, that's cool. And again, I do credit Vera for having a much more interesting mind when it comes to grasping these metaphysical concepts, because frankly a lot of my ideas have ossified. I mean, I've been a fan of 40K for 27 years this year, so that's a long time, and probably a lot of my thoughts have become stuck. You know, when you get older, that happens. You tend to become you become resistant to new ideas, and I'm trying to keep an open mind, and I'm trying to be more flexible. So I'm glad. I am also glad you're here, is what I'm trying to say.
I am only capable of lateral thinking, unfortunately. So,
well, Sanctic Demonology made it all the way to 8th edition. Looks like it was the exclusive Grey Knight Psychic discipline, which replaced their earlier powers. Yeah. Well, 8th edition is not the current edition; it's 2 editions behind. I'm not sure if they still have it in the current rule books. It's a good question. This is why I like to have Alexis around, because she knows I can just say, hey, is this a rule? And she's like, yeah, it's in this codex.
Hey, by the way, if you're interested in all this talk about this so-called Warhammer 40K thing, there's a really cool podcast you can watch featuring the illustrious Ross Watson and Norn Queen Alexis right here in the Lorebeards channel. That's
right. This is something SoTech talks about that we need to mention more, that we are part of a network. This is the Lorebeards and Roleplaying channel. You're on the first episode of Lorebeards and Roleplaying. We're so glad to have you. But we also have a channel for Lorebeards Warhammer Fantasy, which is the original Lorebeards. And then there's Lorebeards 40K. And there's a Lorebeards book club where Vera is part of it. And you can go hear about all the books that she's reading along with Tyretha.
We'll be talking about Skarsnik soonish. Read Skarsnik. It's awesome.
Blessed is the mind too stuck for heresy, says Drazina Question. Thank you. And Micah says this is turning into a deep debate, and I'm here for it. We absolutely will bring you on for the faith episode. I think that's obvious. Because
I would love to talk warp metaphysics. I think it's fascinating. As I said, like my intro to Dark Heresy and 40K in general was doing like a deep conceptual dive into demonology and how it related to the Emperor's presence in the warp. So I have thought about this a lot. That was my starting point.
So why? Okay, so you brought up sanctity demonology for a reason. What is the reason behind why you wanted to ask me about it?
I think it's super interesting.
Well, it got us going, so yeah, it's pretty interesting.
That's it. I just think it's cool. I think it's a neat concept that you can draw power from the emperor like that, because it seems strange, right? Like, what's going on?
Well, it does. It's very unusual.
Like,
we should ask you about perpetuals sometime.
oh God, yeah. There's a whole talk here, like, because we can pick apart sanctic demonology for a while, right? Like, whether it's truly being drawn out of the emperor, if that faith is like building up and placing it in, like if it's manifested from within. Like, there's so much there.
Super chat from Ricardo Andre, my nemesis, my debate partner, my friend. Thank you for supporting us, Ricardo Andre. Talking about debates, he says, did you check the AdMech post? He actually posted this twice. Yes, I did. So one of the conversations that Ricardo and I are having is whether or not the Adeptus Mechanicus is an allied empire within the Imperium, or whether it is fully integrated into the Imperium and de facto just another Adeptus.
Oh man, you got to get into religiosity for that. You got to get into schism for that. You got to get into the nature of the omniziah, the nature of faith from a different angle, the nature of logic as it applies to religion. And oh man, that's interesting too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my position started as no, of course not. They're an imperial. They're a separate entity. They're an allied empire. And Ricardo systematically was like, well, actually, they're listed as one of the Adeptus. They have one of their members on the Council of Terra. They are fully integrated into the Imperium because technology is everywhere. Yada yada yada. And I started fighting back by saying, well, yeah, but the Adeptus Arbites don't go to Mechanicus worlds, and the Ecclesiarchy leaves them alone. And he's like, yeah, but that's because there's enclaves inside the Imperial Adeptus. It's one of those situations where I think we're both right, and we're just slowly getting to a place where we both agree. But yeah, it's fascinating.
It's such a nuanced question, though. You're getting into like de facto and de jure, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, we're doing like political theory now, which I am here for. I'm into it.
Nestor, the reason is badly disguised Xanthite tendencies.
I won't say guilty as charged because I want to act in my own defense a little bit, but anyway, I know my stuff.
You definitely do. Well, we're getting close to the end here, and you said you wanted to ask people about future shows.
Yeah, so we're going to put up a poll soonish about what our next episode might be. There is some chance we run back Dark Heresy relatively soon as well for some expanded discussion and more deep cuts perhaps. But if you have tabletop games you want to see out of us, please let us know. If you want to see any particular kind of segment, if there are things you'd be curious to see us play as an actual play, all of these things would help us a great deal to know, because we're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff over here. It's going to be a fun little time. We got a lot of big ideas. We got some cool guests on, talk about some cool games, pick apart more sorts of thematic fidelity, and I'm really excited.
Some things I think that would be a lot of fun to talk about: the World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade,
the
Apocalypse, the early 90s version of that, and maybe also talking about meta plots at the same time, because that's a really good way to talk about meta plots. We could talk about any edition of Dungeons & Dragons.
Ooh.
Paranoia, which is a classic. I of course tend towards the older stuff, but Mort Borg is of interest.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And you have some things you'd like to bring up too.
Yeah, I'm curious about discussing Eclipse Phase, possibly like fan-made RPGs for anime, things like Poke-Roll. Great, lot of fun. Maybe Dungeon World, even that's getting a second edition soon. Heart and Spire could be neat to discuss.
I have some entertaining stories about Dungeon World. There's some. I wonder if we could talk about the one-page RPGs like Lasers and Feelings.
Oh, fun! Yeah.
Lasers and Feelings. I had a great time with Lasers and Feelings, for example. But that's several years ago. Imperium Maledictum, Lord Warren says, yeah, we should. If we're going to talk about Dark Heresy, why not talk about the spin-offs?
All right, I see the logic.
Oh,
Mech Warrior and BattleTech, that'd be fun. We talked about like Space Vegas earlier. We got Canopus there.
Yeah, well, okay. The BattleTech setting is fantastic. Big fan. Huge fan. I watched the cartoon. That's how much I love it.
Nice.
But in my opinion, and this is what I'd love to this would be a good one for me and Ricardo to go about. I don't think BattleTech's ever had a good role-playing game.
I have a friend who agrees so much. He made his own D100 BattleTech based on Dark Heresy.
Somebody
It's
said,
like that.
Delta Green. Somebody that said that. Yeah, we're going to definitely talk about Delta Green. What's a Borg? Brock 6000. Mork Borg is it's a game from Sweden. You should check it out. It's really cool. Blades in the Dark. Oh yeah, Blades in the Dark.
Oh, nice. We're talking about clocks and whatnot.
Shadowrun. Actually, Shadowrun and Blades in the Dark have a really interesting contrast that I would love to talk about.
Yeah, we could do some like paired days. We talk about things in that vein. I'm excited. Lots of cool stuff to come.
Ricardo says, I don't care about BattleTech. Whatever.
I bet we could get you to care. It's a really cool setting.
It's a really cool setting. Although, from an IP standpoint, like, anyway, I could get that. There's a whole track.
That's all. I know where you're going. It's a whole conversation. We'll get there at some point. We'll get there.
Anyway, we are almost out of time here. So I want to say thank you to everybody for showing up and supporting us on our very first stream.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been a whole lot of fun. I think we're going to send you off to a Q&A that Ross and I did in case you want more of us talking about stuff. It'll look a little less professional than this, but if you're on YouTube, you can see us natter on about all sorts of Warhammer-y things. Just following us, we did an AMA recently, and we're going to redirect over there. Thank you guys so much for coming out for our first episode here, our inaugural chat, and a lot more cool things to come.
Absolutely. So we will see you guys in the future. Are we doing we're doing another show next week, I think is what we're doing. So
yeah, we're gonna have a poll up about the subject of that. We're gonna pour through all the cool suggestions here, and more cool things ahead. We got some cool interviews going, some one shots. We're gonna play the Tomb of Horrors live on stream, completed, no problem.
Oh, Jesus Christ, no. Not the Tomb of Horrors, no. I did that once. I did it once.
I got it. Okay, I need to hear about this. Anyway, we are going to hit the road for now, though. Catch y'all later. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Cheers, everybody.